Fixed. Okay, the mic's fixed. We'll start with that. The mic's fixed. I have to rebuild from scratch here. Everything started over. It just blanked out my OBS on the random here. So bear with me. Let me see if I can bring in some external audio sources. So if you're in the chat, go ahead and let me know if the audio is loud and clear. Then I'll see if it can pick up the phones. Thanks for those of you. So if you're in the chat, go ahead and let me know. Okay, it sounds clear over the radio. So if you're listening at Infinite Plane Radio at any of the audio streams, it should be loud and clear. Maybe even too loud. Think about your neighbors. It's already 11. All right, Kick His Ass C Bass says audio thumbs up. Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward then. We have a ton of voicemails, probably related to the Mcafee psyop. We'll see what that's about. I have my doubts about that, but I have been following it. Whatever it is, I mean, who's actually making money off it? You know, it's either a troll or a psyop or a stunt, but it seems to have metastasized. We'll go into that a little bit. Thanks for joining, Marcel from Holland. Patricia Mathis says it's fine. Appreciate it. Okay, let's go ahead and just go through a few of the things here. There's this thing trending about Joe Biden. Apparently he said something that's been construed in a certain way. And I checked Snopes about his wiped statement. I thought he said wife. I'm just going to play it, and then you can decide for yourself. And then I'll let you know what Snopes said about it, because Snopes is something of an arbiter of reality these days, or consensus reality.
What must be what? What must be what? What must be what? What must be what? What must be what?
Now, a lot of people have been talking about what he said. Many people have different opinions. It depends on whether or not you like him, I guess, based on how some people are interpreting that. But I think it's just something about his wife. But Snopes said nothing to see here. Snopes said, let me get you the quote, because usually they're rushing to his defense. And what they said was, while we can't definitively say what Biden said, neither can anyone else. And that would be Snopes. It's got to be intentional. Now, if it was the thing about the wipe, then you're probably dealing with the level of humor you would expect from somebody like Jim Carrey. So I thought, well, maybe this is a Jim Carrey thing, Jim Carrey character, or hologram in chief, or whatever he is. I mean, it just differs. All right, so many things to cover today. I was actually on the other side of town by the university, and I was reminded of safe spaces and how they existed there. You know, they started at these universities, and the safe spaces were always biased, if you think about it. The safe space was to protect liberals from right-wingers, Tea Party types, MAGAs, the early larval MAGAs. And so the safe spaces were to be like meme-free zones. So it was to protect you from ideas. Then came social distancing, which is state-mandated safe spaces. And these are to protect you from viruses. And I'm seeing now how I kind of think that safe spacing was practicing for social distancing for many of them. And now the same ones that you're social distancing from are the ones who are spreading misinformation, because they're the ones who are, of course, carriers of the variants. You know that. You're a variant factory if you're not triple vaxxed and double masked. I'm still waiting for space junk helmets to take off. Man, this is an interesting one too. Okay, so let's move on to this. So this is kind of funny to me. Inform Overload is one of my favorite channels.
A YouTuber from France.
Used to be one of my favorite channels. Not anymore. Last year they were pretty good because they would find a lot of good information and present it rapid fire. Well, what they're covering today is this. Influencers have been offered cash to spread vaccine disinformation, which is probably true. And so apparently someone was hiring influencers to produce 45 to 60-second videos on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube to say, quote, the mortality rate of Pfizer is 3 times greater than AstraZeneca. Anyway, these shills, some of them have come forth to say that they were being offered payment to act and to perform, and then to reference some BBC article. So one of them said, I can't work for a client that won't give its name and who asks me to hide the partnership. Let me just play a clip. They're super annoying, though. I'll just say this. There are people shilling on both sides of the fence. So last year, we had the celebrities like Tom Hanks and others just coming down with the fashionable disease. And now it's the other side of the fence pushing their narrative. Oh, it's the anti-vaxxers and the COVIDophobes are playing two sides of the same game, if you ask me. And this just shows. I mean, who's getting paid? I know I'm not. In fact, I was taken off of monetization for DLive because of the event of 1/6, because of my criticisms of it. Sleepy Random says, can you turn up the audio just a bit? Let me take a look and see if there's any. Okay, the audio does not go up any higher. What I can do, though, is let me test out. I have a bit of software here. It's called Equalizer APO 64 1.2.1. Let me give it permissions to make changes on my hard drive. I agree. This is supposed to this is supposed to allow me to go beyond all the default settings. I should be able to raise my volume, so if you can't hear me well, I'll manually reboot later. How's that? Zara says, you sound like you're on Mars. Did I break my mic or something? Is my microphone screwed up? It sounds fine on my other device. I never sit around talking about audio because when I started this channel a few years ago on YouTube, we were inundated with trolls, and one of their favorite games was to flood the channel with people saying, I can't hear. So you'd have 5 or 6 people coming along saying they couldn't hear, and then they would stop the thing, they would reboot it, and it would just mess up the flow. And then the trolls would laugh. I fell for it like once. But anyway, we're fine. Let us continue. So my point here was that you have shills on both sides of the debate. Now, I'm not saying that they don't have a point. I mean, it is true that AstraZeneca is pretty much, the logo anyway, is the mark of the beast. Like, this isn't medical misinformation for all of you censors that are listening right now. Just look at the logo. It's 3 6s, just like your CERN logo, and the WEF, the World Economic Forum. You know, the worshippers of the beast matrix don't bother to hide it. It's like, why are we even calling this misinformation? This is just fact. I was thinking about this, you know, at some point it's just going to be a weekly thing. I told you, this is the new communion wafer. And it's also your blood pact. Not with Satan, but with establishment media and establishment scientists, who are basically his proxies. All right, let us continue. Now, this is going to drive Jurassic Liars 26 wild when he hears this. So, Mike Lindell, somebody said turn up the cowbell. Mike Lindell is stirring the pot. This is the pillow guy. And everyone knows this guy from Jimmy Kimmel. They try to rip on him as a crackhead or whatever. But you know what? He was addicted for a while. He overcame it. His story is very public. It's not a thing of shame for him. And it's given him tremendous clout and credibility with the right. And so he goes into the White House and he's like, I was really good at algebra. Let me fix your election. And Trump is like, yeah, let's do it. I mean, that's pretty much his story. So he's like in charge of this thing, but he's figured it out. He literally has cracked the code here, and he's going to deliver the goods August 9th, 10th, and 11th on a cyber symposium. So they're going to be online. No one's going to be able to disrupt this, and he's going to broadcast what he believes are going to be results that will fundamentally alter the results of the election, or at least the we'll see. they think that Arizona is going to be the first domino. But here's the thing, it's being hyped up. 8/11 is going to be also is another important day because there's going to be an emergency broadcast service alert. FCC announces nationwide emergency alert test on 8/11. So mark your calendar, 8/11. FEMA's going to be maybe dropping a bomb. Anyway, Mike Lindell says his cyber symposium will be bigger than Elvis's 1973 Hawaii concert. It's just funny here because you have this strange juxtaposition of Elvis, Mike Lindell, and Trump and Elvis, because Trump's biographer has even said that Trump is in his fat Elvis years. But anyway, there's this channel on YouTube that has gone into detail analyzing the various ways the media has revealed, more or less, through predictive programming, what the near future seems to portend. And he seems to be right on target. So I just think it's funny here. The MyPillow CEO is saying he's going to outdo the king. I'll be watching, and I'll be waiting for the 8/11 address. We'll see if it's the one we've been waiting for. I noticed, I barely watch the news. It's like if you don't watch the news, you can't catch it. But I have noticed a lot of maskies walking around again. I thought that was over, but there's a fourth wave of idiots. Just a heads up. I was asking myself today, I was like, why aren't there more dead homeless people? Like, you would think that they're unvaxxed and they're not protected. They're not sheltered in place in front of their Netflix, in their basements, having everything delivered by Uber drivers. Like, they weren't protected from this devil virus. How did they make it? Maybe they're the variant carriers. All right, let me see here. I'm going through comments. Puzzle says 9/11 was too suspicious. Better do it a month earlier. Oh, 8/11? Right. I thought 7/11 would have been a great day. It's kind of a September. Anyway, as far as their coding goes, I thought, but, as blatant, as obvious as everything is, looking back, it's like you can't really tell the future, as weird as that is. Although we have, on this channel, just to be fair, we actually have accurately predicted the future. If you were listening to Infinite Plane Radio, you knew about space helmets making an appearance, 2020, 2021. You knew about space junk, sourced from China, causing problems in America this year. You also would have known that World War III was going to start on 3/11/2020. You would have known that the Sunday before. So actually, no, this channel is pretty prescient. And it's not really psychic or anything like that. It's not prophecy. It's simply we're reading the metascript. There is a level of media control that has to do with the universal culture or religion or cult, whatever you want to call it. It's a cult at this point. But you can read it. Zareth says, I'm a space junkie. Now, there's a lot of interesting things to be said about space junk, which is one of the major, quote, threats right now. There's correlations between the outer space and inner space that have been told to us in the movies symbolically. It's fascinating. But most recently, on the ISS, for the first time, and I had said this, I had said, isn't it conspicuous the ISS has never been hit with space junk? After all these years, they're talking about how many tens of thousands of pieces of space junk there are. How come it has never been hit with a piece of space junk? Well, just a little while ago, on May 12th, a routine inspection of the robot arm found a hole, a 5 millimeter wide hole in the thermal covering. According to the Canadian Space Agency, a piece of space junk hit the robotic arm. So space junk damages ISS's robotic arm. The significance here is that, one, the odds of this are just astronomical. It's absurd. But two, it's punctured in the arm. It was vaxxed. And the mission was actually called Celestial Immunity. So you have space junk, and then you have the mission Celestial Immunity up here, and the space station gets vaccinated. But the correlations between inner space and outer space are very well known, and it's pretty clearly described if you look at the cover of, it's called the Celestial Immunity Project. Look at the cover of The Economist, Aliens Among Us, where it's making this correlation between viruses and alien invaders, or the virus carriers. This is from August of 2020, The Aliens Among Us, How Viruses Shape the World. And when you look at the cover, it looks like outer space with moons, probes, satellites, but no, you're looking at AIDS and bacteria and microorganisms, and it's just like, okay, look, this is inner space, outer space. And so the injection of the vax is to clean your inner space, and right now the space junk is the major threat, and the ISS gets hit by space junk on a mission called Celestial Immunity. This is absurd. This is great storytelling, I guess. So this is astronaut Megan MacArthur. The human research investigation may provide insights into new vaccines and drugs and advancing the commercialization of space. So she's doing vax science in space. Zara says the Andromeda strain. Oh, what is that one about? Yeah, but I think this is all preparation for alien invasion. Or maybe the alien invasion was just to give us a dramatized version of the aliens within, the anti-vaxxers. Like, what if all the alien propaganda over the years was to prepare you for this? To fear those who reject Big Brother's establishment, science, and media. Now, if anyone's interested in it, I did kind of follow up on this John McAfee thing. And, there's very little to suggest that that was indeed his authentic account. There's quite a lot to suggest we're looking at a big prank. I don't know if his wife would have approved of it. I'm waiting for more information, but I have quite a lot. I have quite a lot to go over here with regards to that thing, but I think we kind of flushed out the whole story. If anybody has anything, I'll be happy to go over it. But this is something else I want to get into. So do you remember a few months ago I said it's kind of odd that Alex Jones can talk about taking Joe Biden out of the White House by any means necessary, and he gets away with it. Yet everybody else, even tangentially connected to the 1-6 riot, was just swept up, just all thrown into jail, no trial. It's like, okay, you were somehow connected, you attended it, you're a suspect. Yet you have the real agitators up there just saying the most egregious things, and they're not being charged. So listen to this. This is Michael Flynn, and he outdoes Alex Jones here. Listen to this. This was when he was presented with a rifle as a gift in Yuba, California.
That's awesome.
And tell us about your gift.
So we were trying to come up with a rifle that we thought was appropriate for a general. So we went with the old school woodland camouflage. So anyhow, this is one of our top quality guns. And
Maybe I'll find somebody in Washington, D.C. That's awesome.
And tell us about your...
So if you heard that, maybe I'll find somebody in Washington, D.C. So you might say that's kind of something that could be taken to be a threat. I mean, just given his background in particular. I mean, if you remember, he's said other things, or he's answered questions in ways that seem to be sort of flippant, but could be taken to be incitement, or at least in the court of public opinion. Because when you look at all of these various fake shooting events, staged terror events, fake characters like Timothy McVeigh, what you find is that the media has narratives to support these absurdities. So whether or not he's doing it on purpose, if you want to give him the benefit of the doubt with jokes about committing political assassinations at a time like this, you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, you have to admit that he's giving a lot of ammunition to the other side. Politics USA said, convicted felon domestic terrorist Michael Flynn jokes about committing political assassinations in D.C. That's how it's being spun. So I'm bringing this up because I have a feeling that the next bowl cut shooter is going to be a MAGA, a QAnoner. And this is what kind of made me think about this. I was watching the latest event with Trump where he was in Phoenix. And those of you who follow all of this meta scripting notice, as I have pointed out, that yeah, you do indeed find patterns and things that kind of reveal what the future may hold. So, for example, we have to bring them up in context. The McCloskeys. So, whether or not you think the McCloskeys had a point waving their weapons in front of their mansion at the marchers, at the peaceful protesters, or whatever, it's hard to deny that these two ridiculous characters, she's dressed like the Hamburglar, and then he's got this ridiculously, I don't know what it is with that shirt. I guess it's just unbuttoned too far down. I thought it was just too tight. But there's something with the shirt. They look clownish to me. But they're up there defending their property. But it's not a coincidence that this exact image came right off the cover of the Turner Diaries, which is about 42 years old. And the Turner Diaries came to life last year, and now all of the latest mass shooters have had a copy. Now it's suddenly being talked about after having been ignored. I mean, this is the book that inspired Timothy McVeigh. Now, what recalled to mind the Turner Diaries for me more recently was the event in Miami. I was like, wow, that tower, that collapsed condo looked like McVeigh's work. And someone had pointed out to me that Timothy McVeigh was not only a fake character, as I had said, but in all likelihood, he's still alive, and he's actually working as Agent Weisball, the guy who presided over the fake disco shooting. So my point being, we have references to the Turner Diaries just kind of coming back. And the narrative with the Turner Diaries is the white nationalist threat. And if you look at the mainstream media's assessment of this and what Biden says, you would think that this is a new terrorist threat that we all have to confront, that it's actually this real thing, that this 1/6 insurrection was just the tip of the iceberg. They're really overhyping this non-existent threat. However, the place where Trump gave his speech was called Turning Point Action. So it may not sound like a lot, Turner Diaries, Turning Point. I would say it does suggest quite a lot. And then a couple of other things too. The hint of the Kraken being released on 8/11, 37 terabytes. There's quite a lot about the number 37, if you want to get into it, that ties into this idea of a Kraken, and it actually connects to the 113 date. Just stuff to look forward to. I don't want to get too lost in the weeds here, but I just wanted to point out that the Turning Point Action speech might be significant, and Turning Point and Turner Diaries can't be ignored if you want to look at the bigger picture, especially in light of these jokes about political assassinations. There's a picture being put together here. That's what I'm pointing out. Commenter says, have you seen the Photoshop zoom of Klaus? They zoom in and show different demons on his face. No, I'd like to see, if you're going to post a link, talking about Klaus Vader, our leader. What do we call him? Our dear leader? Yeah, Trump, though. Trump had said a few things very interesting to me. One, he had said, Biden, he said, that's not Biden, that's not Biden, it's not Biden. He said it 3 times. He also traced cues in the air multiple times. So between McAfee's Dead Man's Switch drama, which was a lot of hype, I think, the Turning Point speech in Phoenix, the throwing of the cues, the calling out Biden as not being Biden, there's a little bit more. Now, Mike Lindell, who I already said, has suggested that he's going to overturn everything on the 11th. He said on 8/13, Joe Biden will step down. Now, this is Mike Lindell. You may not think he's credible, but Mike Lindell claims August 13th will be Trump reinstatement. He gives exact dates. He's been given this information from God, apparently. So we'll see. But 8/11, there will be that emergency broadcast to be prepared for. Remove Kippa says Turning Point USA is a John Birch Society. It's Freemasonry. Interesting. Zaret says Klaus used to shine Kissinger's with his thin lips. I've seen pictures of him when he was younger, Klaus. So let me go and bring this up. Someone wants to see pictures of the Paul Weistaball character. Now, I don't have a lot. There's a lot more pictures than what I have here, but it's not just the side by side that's going to do it, because you have to find the more recent pictures, and the changes that you'll see are consistent with age. But yeah, I'll make those available. In fact, you can find them at our forum at infiniteplane.media. I'll make that a note. I'll make a special video about it. What I'm suggesting here, though, is that the condo explosion looks so much like this. I'll find it for you here really quick here. It looks so much like his work that I was like reminded. I was like, that looks like Mcafee's work. And it's probably not a coincidence that we have all these references to the Turner Diaries all of a sudden. There aren't any coincidences. You know, when it comes to the mainstream, no coincidences. We've been following this concept of what I call the meta script. So, for example, last year, 2020, was largely templated off of 68. The media made it so. If you look at how they framed events and how they intentionally tried to color things, they want to color your perception. And I thought this was just some sort of a PR thing, more or less, an influence operation where they're taking stylistic cues from the late 60s. But it was on both sides. It started when Trump had actually said, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. So this was said by Trump May 2020. And he defended this statement after. He claims he didn't know that this statement was from a police commissioner in Philadelphia from 67 to 71 who had used that expression or coined it. And that's when I started paying attention to this correlation between 68 and 2020. You can find this reiterated in mainstream sources and movies like The Five Bloods, Spike Lee's movie, which was 2020, set in 68. And the cover had 5 individuals kneeling in front of a grave. And this was released before the kneeling became a thing with BLM, post George Floyd's death at the end of May. So anyway, looking at it from this perspective, we thought last year that it would follow that 1969 would be indicated in 2020, that there'd be some kind of similar pattern. And sure enough, 1969 has resurfaced in the form of the space race, which has been a big part of it. But the next thing I'm looking for to correlate with 1969, perhaps another thing might even be space. I think the next thing to look for it right now in this context, just sticking to the subject, is Helter Skelter. Keep in mind, Charles Manson, who, by the way, was the age of Jesus. He was 33 when he started his cult. He was talking about Helter Skelter as being the phase where the peaceful protesters become violent and where they're told to rise. And he was taking these messages out of this Beatles album. And that's where the phrase Helter Skelter comes from. But the thing to keep in mind is the Manson killings they were intended to be a false flag. He was blaming or scapegoating blacks to start a race war. That was the whole point of it. That's why I was wondering, why didn't he just get a job at CNN if he wanted to do a race psyop? So I'm looking for something similar. Just expect it. Another thing from 68 that was resurfacing in 2020 were the monoliths. Space Odyssey's monoliths were everywhere. I think there were something like 87 last year. And now, if you've noticed, NATO has a big, giant digital monolith that all of our world leaders have gone to go worship. I'll get the Timothy McVeigh Weistaball comparisons, and I'll put them on the forum if I don't find them now. Let's go ahead and continue. Let's see. Yeah, Biden's been talking about blood drinking a lot, which I think is... Some are saying it's indicative of his mental decline. I don't know. Maybe he's got something on his conscience. Then he talks about being present on the Judiciary Committee 150 years ago. So it's like, wait, Joe Biden was in politics in 1870? Like this vampirism thing. Maybe there's something to it. By the way, I watched part of a movie. It was Interview with a Vampire. I think it was free on YouTube. I couldn't get past like 20 minutes of it. Total garbage. I can't believe how bad movies used to be. Is anybody else having that experience? Ever since I've started hyper-analyzing the news, the fake news, the psyops, the garbage propaganda movies on Netflix, who, by the way, the founder of Netflix, the co-founder, the first CEO, was the great-nephew of Edward Bernays, from Propaganda. We're talking about Wizards of Mind Control. Bernays, related to Freud. I mean, none of this stuff is coincidental. But anyway, the more I analyze all this fakery, the less I can even enjoy movies anymore. It's been that way for a while. Sleepy Random says, watch Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Slayer. All right, let us continue. I do like CNN. Like, if I ever get the chance, if it's on somewhere, I will watch it. I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious. Look at this. This was the absolute state of China. This is Eon Cheong put this up on Twitter. Online influencers are chasing clout, pretending to be affected by floods. So here you have somebody in our media chastising social media influencers in China, pretending to be victims of floods for clout. And this is what CNN has been doing since their inception. How often have you... They fake everything. They psyop the weather. They psyop everything. It's not just the shootings. But they don't like it. The mass media doesn't like competition. They don't like the average person being able to psyop for clout. Remember these images from early 2020 in Wuhan where people were just falling on their faces? Whatever happened to that? What variant was that? Why don't they bring that one back? Gardening Gal says, everything new on Netflix is woke teens. Well, Netflix is your Project Looking Glass. You want to read the future and the past, look at Netflix. I mean, it kind of distorts it, but not really. It's actually a perfect reflection in like the fundamentals. Like if you had watched Netflix 2019, you would have been ready for 2020. That's why I've been telling people, get ready for asteroids. Put on your helmets. You got your double vax and your triple mask. They're going to tell you to put on helmets, and you're going to have to. And it wasn't long after we started talking about this that it actually happened. And it turns out, so the Chinese space junk, the piece that almost hit the Indian Ocean, it could have landed anywhere between the 42nd North and 42nd South. That piece of space junk was launched on the 119th day of the year, which has significance. You'll know if you've read the Metascript, the book. But that piece of junk was going to hit us near the 42nd anniversary of Skylab falling. And I looked into this, and 42 years ago, when Skylab was going to fall, there were helmet parties where people were putting on helmets thinking that this thing might land on their homes. I love it, though. The tinfoil hatters are the ones making sense. And the ones who aren't wearing the tinfoil hats they're going to put on the space junk helmets if they're not already wearing full headgear. Yeah, tinfoil masks never took off. I was surprised at that. I think it's almost an elitist thing, too. There's something kind of interesting. Like, I haven't checked yet, but I'm willing to bet I'll see more masked faces at Trader Joe's than a Walmart. Like, I went to a Target, and it was like every other person was a maskie. So it's like, okay, it's got to be, I think maybe it has to do with one's political leaning. We know this, it's a political thing, but people shop in this way, too. So I'm kind of curious to see. But that's all it is. It's all just an opportunity for a social experiment. It's a conformity test. In many ways, it's a Milgram experiment. I would say that WHO has Munchausen syndrome by proxy. But this is the New World Church. It's the New World religion, and if you've already been an apostate, if you're already a media apostate, you didn't fall for it, but you're just watching people who did fall for it. Look, this is an example. I said that the media has been psyoping the weather. This is proof of Neuralink because I was just thinking, I wish I could get that clip from CNN where that guy is leaning into the wind when people in the background are just walking along calmly. And here is that clip.
Okay, picking it up here in Wilmington, North Carolina, right at the Intracoastal, and we're in one of these vans.
Someone just tweeted this.
Nasty.
And yes, this guy is hyping up the weather, leaning into the wind, and the people in the background are unaffected.
We had some vans like this last.
See, this to me this is how everybody is right now. You might laugh at this and say, well, these people in the news, they're so mendacious. Well, I'll tell you what, the reporter here who's consciously playing into the deception is pretty much, I think he's exactly the kind of mindset. He has the exact mindset of the people who are reinforcing the pandemic narrative by wearing the masks. They feel like they're doing some good by playing into it. Like they're in a way they're role playing, they're LARPing, but I think that there's some kind of a virtue attached to it. Like they're saving you. I'm making you safer. You stay home and I'll brave this dangerous weather. And in the background, of course, you have the anti-maskers who don't trust the media. This is just drama. It's crisis acting, actually. And I said it last year. I'm like, we're a world of crisis actors. And those of us who stepped off the world stage are being drafted onto it, where, no, you have to participate. It's one of those movies where the actors come off the stage and run around. You don't get an opt-out anymore. But they gave you a check, right? Michael O'Connor says it's an old video. Well, there's thousands like it. That's my point. Thousands. Here's another one. This is a picture where the reporter, Anderson Cooper, is up to his belly button. And if you take a step back, you can see the camera crew is not that deep. So he might even be kneeling. Anderson Cooper might be on his knees right now. As hard as that sounds to believe. Under the water, faking it. This is crisis acting. Infinite Plane Radio. Call back if you care to. You know what? Just so you guys know, I turned the ringer off because we had 3,200 back-to-back calls the other night over Mcafee, and the ringing just wouldn't stop. Okay, here's another one. This is Lucy Yang from ABC. This is Eyewitness News 7. So she's in a boat, very brave, and the crew and everyone around her. But then in the background, no, it's not Jesus walking on water. That's just a regular person who doesn't believe the fake news, and he's not pretending. Because the guy behind her, yeah, he's literally at street level. Like she's not underwater. They're faking it. Nothing new here, though. All right, let's see here. Going through comments. Lieutenant Kramer says, Drump's mother is from Scotland, and he's building golf courses there. Good God Almighty, wake up and pray for some leaders of our military to fend off the UN and NATO. Yeah, fend off the cult of the digital monolith. Good luck. You know, the whole pandemic, I believe, was just an operation to effectively stop the infodemic. And the infodemic was free-flowing information. Mark says, did you see the new Economist cover that called out the IPS? It's called No Safe Place. Let me take a look. It wouldn't be the first time. I mean, I think that it's not just us, you know. I mean, it's the people who are calling out the fake news effectively are constantly being, in a way, almost mocked. I get the sense that there's a bit of animosity, too. Like, I think the mass media resents people that don't believe. You heathens. If you have a cover, if you can show me the cover, I'm looking for it right now. I found so many great covers. In fact, now that we're on the subject of Economist covers, I found it. The one cover you have to look at is the one from the solstice of 2017. It's like the new shape of Chinese influence. The new shape of Chinese influence has a globe covered in spikes like a COVID. And again, this is 2017. The new shape of Chinese influence, new novel, influenza. Novel influenza. Okay, no safe space. has a couple of penguins on a recliner watching the globe burning on TV. Yeah, I would say that's definitely a shout out. You know who else I think shouted us out is SpaceX. You know, in their Dragon module, they have a penguin. They send up there. It's so they know. It's called Gwyn Gwyn, the flying penguin. Here it is. Now this was created by a London-based company called Jellycat. It was chosen as SpaceX Crew's it's chosen as their zero-G indicator. It's like, all right, guys, it's time to fake like we're floating. Somebody behind the screen, like they have this fake set, somebody above pulls the string, I mean, and it lifts the penguin up. And that's how they. Have you seen those old movies where they faked ghosts with strings, like lifting objects? That's what it looks like they do with these things. They don't even try anymore. I'm kind of embarrassed for how poor these billionaires have performed. I mean, with that kind of a budget, I could have faked it so much better. I could have outdone, but it's all ritual. Like if you didn't know, there's a ritual going on. It's a fertility rite in the sky. Remember I was talking about how 1969, 1920, and 2021, that there's this templating? Well, part of 69, the moon landing, that was a fertility rite. Apollo, sun god, the moon. And as strange as that may sound, I mean, the Saturn rocket, Saturn, the obelisk, that's the earth god, you're looking at a fertility rite. And that's why the mass media was drawing attention very conspicuously to the shape of Bezos's rocket. They were pointing this out because they were reminding us of what we were actually seeing. And what's more, when you look at the Virgin, which is the goddess, you look at the Virgin rocket going into space, all those actors up there are opening their mouths in a very exaggerated fashion because they're supposed to be, if you ask me, it's because it's a fertility rite. Not a coincidence that the Virgin ship goes up there and then its wings go up, like behind its, I don't even like to, I'm sorry, but its wings go up, it's lewd. And then a week later, the other thing goes up. It's all a ritual. I didn't make it up. I'm not in their cult. I don't worship this stuff. They do. Knockout Bear says billionaires are Babylon heirs. Yeah, I would say so. The triple six, what is it? No, sorry, the triple comma club is what they call themselves. But it wouldn't surprise anyone here if you've looked into, and I'll go through this really quick for a few minutes here. If you go to themetascript.com, I do have a little bit of a lineage on one of these mind maps about the new religion, where it comes from, and specifically the space age and its origin with Babylon, mystery religion. Aleister Crowley described the New Age religion as a rediscovery of, I'll get an exact quote. Aleister Crowley described what he was doing as a rediscovery of the Sumerian tradition. And the thing is, he was operating on his side of the world, but in America, Jack Parson, well, he was the American counterpart to Aleister Crowley. And so the significance here is that Crowley was all about this sex magic, basically, is at the core of this thing. What they actually venerate, what they worship, is the god of the earth, and his main emblem is the obelisk. And what I'm suggesting is Jack Parsons, rocket scientist, American counterpart to Crowley, had just taken the old aeon, their words, the old age, templated religion, and just dressed it up with science fiction. So you turn your obelisks into rockets. Your goddess of the night sky, Isis, is now the ISS. And if you look at the dates and the various ways that they script these various dramas, these events like the Apollo landing, you'll see, no, it's all ritual. So you have at the very core of this space age, the very beginning of it, at the very genesis of it, you have this New Age religion. New Age Satanist Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard, science fiction writer, And L. Ron Hubbard, you might not think much of Scientology. The media attacks it, but when you really get down to it, Scientology is just another facet, another face of this space religion, and it's the same at its core. It's all the Babylon mystery religion. There's quite a lot to go into here, but a few other hints to throw out there. Robert Heinlein, Stranger in a Strange Land, he has some connections to a Laurel Canyon group, the Parsonage, and this book club where you had a combination of rocket scientists, Satanists, and film types, actresses, filmmakers, and all of that ties together to construct our New Age religion, which has largely come to us through pageantry and drama through the television. How many of you that are actually there to watch these rockets launch? No, you're all experiencing it through the screen. And the screen is the new Bible. So the New Age Bible is the screen that is curated by them. It's the digital monolith is the perfect description of this thing, because unlike the previous Bibles where they have to find the heretical texts and burn them and burn the people who knew the info, well, now they can just shadow ban you and delete that content. And they delete with impunity. I mean, the digital book burning has gone on unabated since I've been paying attention. They really kicked it in hyperdrive like in 2016, but nobody cares about the channels that get kicked off. And the channels that get kicked off YouTube are the conspiracy theories, or those things that are branded conspiracy theories, which basically is just non-mainstream media takes on things. And they're always expanding the definition of what a conspiracy theorist is. And now they stopped calling you conspiracy theorists because it sounds like you might have a point or you have some kind of reason behind what you're doing. But now they've changed it to you're conspiracists. They spell it conspiracist, and they do it on purpose. It's all word magic. All right, let's see here. Michael Connor says love and rockets. Yeah, well, that's my point being, just briefly, is that the fertility rites that you were watching this month in the sky were just a kind of a redoing the rites of 69. And 69, if you get into Crowley and his Book of the Lies, they talk about this. That number also has a lot to do with this concept of sex magic. And that's why it's not a coincidence, if you ask me, that SpaceX and space sex sound so similar. In fact, there's a company of adult objects that created things based on these rockets that actually used that name. Probably not a coincidence either. Well, none of these things are coincidences. I could go into in fact, we should just do an updated documentary, Cult of the Obelisk, where we go through all the space agencies and show you, no, this is a religion. It's a cult. Heaven is something that, there's always been disagreements on what exactly heaven is. Some concepts of heaven involve rewards for things done on earth. Others are more ephemeral. Different ideas of heaven, but people kill over their competing versions. And the new heaven, the universal one, is outer space. And people aren't fighting over what outer space is because they can all agree it's science. Sin, religions differ on what constitutes a sin. Well, not anymore, because the new concept of sin is the virus. It's the ultimate tool to regulate the individual. And instead of it being a superstition, now it's science. But it's still a superstition. Just like outer space and space travel is still fake. Lily Bell says, the NATO digital monolith was ridiculous. I noticed the German chancellor was confused. I think they were just in full demon worship mode. They're like Lord Baal. And they're waiting for the AI god to descend upon it. That's the reason why I think it's important that it's digital. Now, if you look at the significance of, here's where AI comes into this whole thing. AI, A is 1, I is 9. And the significance here is that every major transformative psyop of like the last century has been encoded with this AI. Pearl Harbor was Operation AI. During PNAC, when they were planning 9/11, they described it as, we need a new catalyzing event, a new Pearl Harbor. And what did they get? 9/11. 9/11 had 19 hijackers. There's your AI. 19 years later, COVID-19, which was preceded by C-19, a comet, by the way. Just a lot of this 19 kind of figures into this stuff. So now we have the World Economic Forum talking about the Global AI Initiative. And this is coming from the World Economic Forum. It says, Global Alliance aims to accelerate the adoption of AI. Now, this talk of artificial intelligence, look, responsible artificial intelligence. Again, the next transformation, well, this is post-reset. So the reset, COVID-19 is a reset number, in other words. It's like they hit the reset button. That's somehow coded into this thing. Now, I have something here, though. This is kind of interesting because we're talking about AI, artificial intelligence, as like descending into this digital monolith and taking over and basically showing us how to run our one world properly. Well, now listen to the girlfriend of a billionaire. So you know she's in touch with reality. Listen to Grimes talking about how artificial intelligence can perfect communism for us, perfect government.
I have a proposition for the communists.
And she says so because forced labor is not a vibe, if you didn't know.
So typically, most of the communists I know are not big fans of AI. But if you think about it, AI is actually the fastest path to communism. So, if implemented correctly, AI could actually theoretically solve for abundance. Like, we could totally get to a situation where nobody has to work, everybody is provided for with a comfortable state of being, comfortable living. AI could automate all the farming, weed out systematic corruption, thereby bringing us to as close as possible.
So, again, we're talking about this AI god that will descend and fix everything. And now I want to get to the last part. I can't listen to it all in one. I mean, this is the person who named her baby off of the Google Chrome suggested password. Like, it's totally unpronounceable. Okay, now, listen.
Farming is really not a vibe.
Yeah, forced labor is not a vibe.
Let's be real, enforced farming is really not a vibe.
Not a vibe. Okay, good to know. Good to know. I want to hear that with a pile of skulls behind her. Like, I'll put that in the background. It's just, there's something about this idea, though, of handing over control of the world to AI. It just sounds like they've been building up for this, and a lot of people will probably think it sounds just fine. Well, who do you think's going to be behind the curtain? You know, if you ask me, it's a ruse. He couldn't get over his fiance's death, so he brought her back as an AI chatbot. The Jessica simulation. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hello?
Hey, what's up, caller? What topic are we covering that you want to talk about?
I don't know if it's me, but I can't hear you that well. You're kind of muffled up.
Okay, let me try this. Hold on a second. I want to make sure I'm on the right speaker with you. Okay, how about now?
It's a little bit better. So I just wanted to speak about the Grimes thing. So I don't think these are real billionaires we're dealing with here. I think they're all kind of like actors on a world stage. They're paid for, you know. They're not really. The money's not. There's a certain level of power that you have in this world, and at that level, like, money is not even a thing anymore. You know what I mean? I think whatever's controlling Bezos, Gates, and all these guys, I think all these guys are just there to show you that, look, you too can be a success as well, you know, and to keep everybody chasing that Memon dream, you know. I think what really controls the show behind the scenes is are like these people that live in castles in Eastern Europe that have no roads going to them. You know what I mean? Like, if you ever watch that channel, the Central Intelligence Agency channel, it's like a homeless guy that just backpacks through the forest of Europe, and he actually like stumbles upon these castles with like perfectly manicured lawns in there. It's kind of creepy, actually. You know what I mean? And I think those are the people that run the show, you know what I mean, that run everything here. And everybody you see and I see on TV are just these people that they're kind of like put there on, you know, to like represent them, but you'll never know who they are. Because I remember when I was working at a pharmaceutical back in the day, and they just got bought up by the this is weird stuff. They just got bought up by the original Merck family, if you're familiar with it, who I'm talking about. The original Merck family, is Merck Pharmaceuticals. And what happened was he's sitting there telling us who they are, and they're like a 400-year-old family. They're 150 family members strong, and he gave us a little show and tell about who they were, and then he turns around and he says, "You see this technology behind us?" And everybody like looked at these big screen TVs. He's like, "This is our technology. We've owned the patents for liquid crystal displays for the last 200 years." You know what I mean? Like,
Wow.
like that blew my mind right there when I was listening to that for the first time. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think all this shit that we're going through right now has already been done. I think the Spanish flu was absolutely fucking fake. And they completely, like, you could brainwash people so much easier back in the day with a newspaper, you know what I mean, as opposed to now. But I'm surprised how many people are still brainwashed even now with all this, access to real information as opposed to this fucking Fed shit that we're given through CNN. I can't believe how many people are still brainwashed in this society, but
Right,
it is what it is. And
I remember.
Yeah, go ahead.
I remember there was this meme going around last year of like a plague 100 years ago, Spanish flu. Then 100 years before that, something else. And they said, oh, it's a cyclic thing. It happens every 100 years. And my first thought was, no, the elite like to gut the middle class every once in a while, and they can use different excuses. It's a plague, or they can use communism. But it just seems like it's a strategic way to consolidate power, and they did that. I mean, if you look, last year, look who made out like $33 billion first quarter was Amazon. Meanwhile, all the small businesses get shut down. So yeah, I think this is an elite trick.
Yeah, exactly. They did the same shit with the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu was absolutely fucking fake. Nobody died in reality. But you have people out there saying, oh, yeah, people did that. They did the same shit. So if you look at the timeline of the Spanish flu, it was like Spanish flu, the Roaring 20s, and then all of a sudden, like, the Roaring 20s was this shift in capital right there, and then all of a sudden, like, the Great Depression. And it's like, what the fuck just happened there? And the same thing's happening over here. You see this pandemic taking place right now. You see this skyrocketing Tesla stock and all that other shit. There's no value in the fucking stock at all. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden you see what you're going to see next is complete, total fucking economic collapse. And then you're going to see a world war again, is what you're going to see, or some kind of fucking, like, thing that just absolutely destroys this world again and sets us back into the Stone Age. Because that's what it did. You know what I'm saying? But the way I see it, the real people controlling the things, you'll never know who they are. I'll never know who they are. But I got a glimpse of it in my lifetime. And I think those people right there were some of those people. You know what I mean?
Well, there's somebody
it was the only time I sat that far away from a billionaire. You know what I mean? And it was kind of surreal, actually. You know what I mean? It was because, like, right after they told us who they were, they laid off like 1,000 people after they literally bought a $10 billion company here in America. Like outright cash. Here you go. No, it was like pocket change for them. Okay, we'd like this back, please, because it was like a company built on confiscated technology from the Nazis. And it was their technology. You know what I mean? It was like it's old school shit, but it's like. Because they weren't allowed to buy companies in America because until Bill Clinton opened up that NAFTA fucking trade, and then all of a sudden these billionaires were able to buy. And now what you're seeing is like this buy up of pharmaceuticals everywhere in America. You see Sanofi buying up like a shitload of freaking pharmaceuticals, and you see Merck buying up a shitload of pharmaceuticals too. So and those are all European companies. I'm telling you right now. Whatever's ruling the show is in the forests of Europe, and if you ever end up there, you're either on the dinner plate or you stumbled on there hiking through the woods, man. And that's what's going on. There's no roads going to these mansions, you know what I mean? Castles, actually, because they don't want you going there, you know what I mean? And But if you check out that, I'll leave you at this. If you check out that channel, Central Intelligence Agency channel, it's just this like crazy guy from South Africa. You know what I'm saying? That backpacks through Europe. But it's really interesting, the stuff you see in there. So yeah, check that out. And thanks for the call, man.
Yeah, appreciate it very much. Appreciate all the information, and I'll check out that channel. Have a great night.
Appreciate it. Bye bye.
All right, excellent points there. Someone in the comments says Hunger Games, and that's what it sounds like. And what he brought up about 200-year-old patents, this is all very consistent with this idea that there is this entrenched elite who periodically have to hit a reset button in order to maintain a balance of power, which makes sense to me. How else can the few maintain control over the many? And it does seem like the internet is problematic. Like, I think that the internet itself is an infodemic. I think literacy is an infodemic. If you look at the way that literacy has been controlled, especially over plantations, you're like, well, the people who like to control people know about how to control and filter information and how to use ignorance as a weapon. And the internet is a way to dispel ignorance. It's mostly optional these days. A lot of people, like, look, callers, a lot of people still opt into the ignorance, and they show you. They literally put it on their faces, which is convenient in a way. You don't accidentally get too close to any of them. But I think this is also one of the reasons why we've been inundated with nothing but dystopian fiction. All fiction, if it's mainstream, it's dystopian. If there's anything that takes place in the future, it's always after we wrecked the world. Always post-reset. Tone Deaf says the Roman aristocracy and the black nobility, all roads lead to Rome. Well, it does make sense that you wouldn't have people in front with very recognizable names. You know, people fall for the red herrings all the time, and I think that's what the caller was referring to. You got these billionaires or supposed billionaires or actors. I like the idea that some of these actors out there who are making millions per movie are just minimum wage employees, just working at some rich guy's mansion, and their lives are secretly hell. I mean, actually, it might be that way, like Britney Spears. Right. Lucky Larry Sheckelstein says the victors write the history. Well, that's true too, and right now they're curating history day by day, and this is why it matters, and this is why this channel matters, because this channel is the only platform where we're going to maintain a continuity of criticism over the course of many years, and we're just going to continue to criticize and note what is real, what is fake, so there is a record. Because every time they censor a video or block an idea, they're trying to destroy any competing versions of what happened, and our version happens to be the correct one. We may not have all the facts, but we're not starting off with a lot of false premises. You know, I don't believe in global warming, for example, and if I had that as a starting point, then I wouldn't be able to understand, I don't think, the psychological operation inherent in things like, well, the carbon footprint. The idea that you are somehow responsible for the world's response. Like, your use of dino juice is going to cause flooding. You know, that's just a modern flood myth. And it actually does terrorize people. Think about how you might laugh at the story of Noah's flood because it's childish. And if some guy walking around with a beard said, hey, the world's going to flood, get in my ark, you wouldn't take him seriously. But now you got this billionaire who says the world's going to flood, get in my rocket. And if you look at the emblem of NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, it's literally a dove. And if you look at their page, and this is the group that works with NASA, it's a world being flooded, and you've got this ark that they've built. And look, that's what the space program is. It's our escape from global warming, which is the wrath of God because of our wickedness. But the globe punishes, well, it punishes your consumption of fossil fuels, your consumer decisions. But your original sin, though, has been given a new name, and they call it your carbon footprint. Let's see what else we have here. Going through comments. Everybody here, I appreciate you leaving comments. We try to acknowledge all of the great ideas, and also I put them on the screen A brand new setup here. I had to start from scratch tonight. Also, I have the phones back on 833-311-1984, and we do take voicemail. So if I'm not live, if you want to leave a message, in fact, I have quite a few voicemails to go through here. Let me go through the rest of these links before we get too much further. Also, press passes. So if you didn't know, last year after the lockdown started, I started issuing out press passes for Infinite Plane Media. And this just means that you call in and therefore you're a reporter. And we had a number of people who were investigating the claims of the media when the pandemic thing started. And, you know, if you're media, you're essential. If you're essential, you're not locked down. So this became something of a freedom pass. So I have a lot of people ordering these press passes and calling in. And what I'm trying to do now is consolidate all of the field reporters. So if you have a press pass, if you want to be involved any further, infiniteplane.media. I'm going to be using the forums. I'm going to be using press releases to consolidate a lot of what we're reporting on, but I'm also going to be doing debriefings. So if you've someone who has actually done some reporting or you've gone to do something firsthand, we can do interviews about it in the Discord server, and then it will get played later. Last year we had a number of eyewitnesses to some, like for example, we had someone in Yorba Linda when that crazed Antifa ran over the Trumpers, broke a few legs. Well, she had actually batoned and maced one of our reporters. Then also the other side of this organizational structure, if you look at the chart, this is what we do in the Discord server, the think tank, where we do a lot of our research. If you want to be involved in the research, if you want to have access or get the links and get the tips, get the spoiler alerts before anybody, you might want to join the Discord server. Just go to infiniteplane.info. Probably the easiest link to memorize. You know, last week, all of my domains were shut down for like 12 hours. How many of you here remember that? I had doxed QAnon, which many people find hard to believe, but I'm not even trying to really make too much noise about that now. It's a done deal if you ask me, and you'll see in the coming weeks. But right after I pointed this out, all of my domains were just seized temporarily. They came back up, but while they were down, I purchased infiniteplane.info and infiniteplane.buzz from a different registrar. So I know we hit a nerve. And we've done this a few times in a few different ways, I believe, this channel and this think tank, but you know you did something right when your web domains get pulled and nobody tells you, no explanation. There's a few other things that have happened with this channel, like earlier this year I could get into, but let's stay on topic. Oh, by the way, Richard Branson was worse than Epstein. Branson, okay, this is bad. Okay, so basically this, Branson catered to the A-list and the royalty, while Epstein catered to the B-list. So Branson also has islands, as you know, in the Virgin Islands near Epstein's. His airline is called Virgin, and you could find many images of Branson, and I don't know how much of this is just PR. Interesting character. Like I said, I'm going to do a follow-up, kind of a part 2 to the Cult of the Obelisk documentary. I might even start producing that tonight because I didn't spend enough time analyzing Virgin. And now that I've had some time to look into this character, there's quite a lot to go off of there. You know, in addition to his basis in that movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Like the last caller had it right. These world stage characters they give us are just that. It's admitted that Elon Musk's persona, his character, the guy who's the first colonizer of Mars, was dreamed up in the mind of that Nazi von Braun, who published it in the Mars, A Technical Tale. He's also consciously identified himself with Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka, Iron Man, Tony Stark. Let's see what else here. Look, I have to, this is something else too. If you didn't notice, the Branson thing, I find this to be very problematic. So, and I'll show you. I can show you how it's fake with one little glitch on the editing. But here's a problem I have. They didn't go into zero gravity. Like they didn't actually go into space. They're doing, if anything, it's a parabolic flight. It'd be equivalent to going in an elevator really high and then jumping as it goes down. Like, this is just a roller coaster ride. And I just find it really odd that they would unbuckle at the top of a 50-mile high roller coaster ride. And there's chairs in the room that you could impale yourself on. This one's bad in itself. The Bezos one is 10 times worse. We'll look at that one separately. But if you watch the top of the climb here, because you don't see them on the way up. You're not going to see Bezos and that 80-year-old Wally Funk. You're not going to see them being pressed against their seats, their eyebrows down to their chins, when the G-forces are pushing down on them. We don't see that. We just see them at the top when they're dangling from the wires. But anyway, on the Branson flight, you'll see this stuff coming out of the back of the rocket, like at a 45-degree angle to the right. You can just watch. This is original footage. Well, that debris that's coming out, I believe, is just a special effect. I think it's a CGI layer. And the reason I say so is when it cuts back to the inside of the ship, you see the same debris, but now it's on the inside. And you can see a piece right here by the window, right by the portal, almost hits him. It shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be on the inside of the ship, but it is. That alone tells you they're not in space. I also have a problem with how wide they all open their mouths, but we'll talk about the overjaw effect later. Do you all know what the overview effect is? They claim that if you go high enough, you suddenly start seeing through national boundaries and political parties and everything is one. Like, that's their new Christ consciousness. This is this new age thing. Cosmic consciousness. That's why I said space is the new heaven. So those who've gone to heaven, who have seen the face of God, come down changed. Those who've gone to space and seen the face of globe, come down changed. It's a religion. Lily Bell says, I want to know how Bezos walked off the thing with his cowboy hat on his bald head. I watched him take it off before entering the capsule. Ooh, a continuity error. I just thought it was strange that they're up there at the top of the world and they could look out the windows and experience the overjaw effect or whatever. But instead they start throwing Skittles and little orange balls around and doing zero-G twister. Like, okay, that's not weird. This guy and his brother, this 80-year-old and an 18-year-old named Demon, are going to just kind of frolic around in the middle of the cramped cabin. None of it made sense. What a waste of $28 million. Hillman says, so you have to go to space to get an overview effect? No. Lucky for you, Space Buzz exists, and the Space Buzz Project wants to brainwash your kids. So basically, what they think they can do is they can give your children a virtual experience they call... This is the virtual education program where they can virtually take them up to space with Oculus lenses on their heads, and this will make them feel like they've gone to space, and then they will have that effect. This is a video on the subject by Spacebus.
Diving in outer space, but when gazing back,
oh my God, look at that picture over there.
They saw our small,
Wait, did you hear that astronaut? He said, look at that picture over there. He didn't say, look at that big wet ball hanging in space. He said, look at that picture.
space, but instead, when gazing back,
oh my God, look at that picture over there.
they saw our small, fragile planet and realized it's all we have. This powerful cognitive shift is known as the overview effect, and less than 600 people have been to space to experience it.
So, they want to democratize this experience. It's not just for billionaires. You don't have to be rich to go to heaven.
Spearheaded by ESA astronaut Andrei Kuipers, the Overview Effect Foundation takes children on a revolutionary educational program designed to inspire a new generation of young ambassadors for planet Earth. Sending them.
So there you have it. Sending them into space on a custom engine rocket simulator. They're going to have a green screen. And,
with the program.
And they're going to feel like they've gone to outer space. This kind of reminds me, and this is just brainwashing, by the way. They want to give you a cognitive shift through a TV screen, through a simulation.
And its resources more sustainably, as we're all astronauts aboard Spaceship Earth.
And that's the key there. You're all astronauts aboard Spaceship Earth. And it's part of this idea of moving you towards this sustainable habitat as a new ideal. We have to minimize our impact on the environment. It reminds me of Space Cadets, which was this TV show, which was actually kind of a hoax. This was a British TV show, Space Cadets, from 7 December 2015. The final episode was on 16 December. No, this is 2005, excuse me. This was a 5-day trip around the world. That was the basis for this TV show. But anyway, they never left the Earth. But the people on board thought that they did. And the way that they pulled this off, how they managed to get everyone in this space shuttle simulator to think that they were actually orbiting, is they used special effects and a lot of lying. Half of the people on board were actors, and the other half were cadets. And apparently the simulator was the same one they used in the movie Deep Impact and Armageddon, Space Cowboys. You know, movies that are predicting the future where asteroids come down to Earth or whatever. Which is going to happen. In fact, TMZ reported on it recently, so you know it's going to happen. If TMZ reports on something, you know they want it to really saturate everywhere. The people who don't watch, political news, they'll catch the celebrity news. TMZ on Twitter, enormous asteroid heading toward the Earth. Anyway, my point being about this Space Cadets is that people inside this immersive illusion, surrounded by people who reinforce it, aren't really able to get out of it. And it wasn't until the end, when they pulled the walls down, that, they started crying is what happened. Because they thought they were in space. Lickety says Mars is in St. George, Utah. I think Mars is in Arizona. So Major Tom to ground control. This is from TMZ. There's a giant asteroid headed our way. I want to point out this too. This one's the size of the Great Pyramid. They always do this, like on Election Day. Asteroid the size of Trump Tower is going to hit the White House. They're always just making these things up. And I want to point this out. They predict an asteroid every other day. They've been wrong every single time. Think about that. You're supposed to believe that they can accurately send probes to comets and asteroids millions of miles away, and they do it all the time, and these little probes send selfies back. They're always right, but how come they're always wrong when it comes to the incoming? And also something else, why don't we ever see photographs? I'm always just stunned that they still show us these drawings of the Earth. Looks like crayon. Tominoid says Mars is anywhere they stick a red filter on. Right. There was something about the red filter. There's some giveaway I found on a site where I believe the filter, and I'll see if I can find this. It didn't, I guess they weren't thinking their props through, and they had the NASA sticker on the rover. I have to look and see. There was something off with the color which suggested a blue sticker and a red filter. Lily Bell says, on Sky News Australia, they reported an asteroid the size of Sydney Bridge. Right, it's always like that. Another good point, they didn't know where the Chinese rocket was going to land. It's just so contradictory. They're accurate with everything going out, but they're wrong with every incoming prediction. There's something wrong with this picture. And what's the difference? Well, you can't fact check them when it comes to their celestial observations. But when they lie about stuff here on the earth, yes. By the way, this is one of these examples where I think that this channel has been messed with or something. I think that there's a correlation here. So last year, we were talking about this story and how unbelievable it is. How in 1965, a meteorite ruined an Alabama woman's afternoon. So, no, actually this was 1954. So unbelievable. But I brought this up because people who believe in the moon landings have to believe in this. You don't get to opt out. It's like your Bible. If you're going to believe establishment science, you can't cherry pick. You got to go with the whole picture. So, according to this story, back in 54, an 8-pound rock fell through her ceiling, filled up her house with dust. Dust filled the house after the crash. When it finally settled, they spotted a rock. Now, what doesn't make sense about this is they said that there was a reddish light and a fireball, trails of smoke, and an arc of light in the afternoon sky. This rock then went through her roof, bounced off her radio, and hit her where she was lying on the couch. So you heard all this right. An arc of fire, arc of light, trail of smoke goes through the roof, bounces off the radio, and then whacks this woman on her hip. Her name is Ann Hodges. I think it's a ridiculous story. And I was looking they called it the extraterrestrial bruiser. And they have a picture of her on her bed with a doctor who's got a bow tie, so you know it's legit. And it looks like they smeared some paint on her. Like, that doesn't look like an impact wound. Like, is this what an asteroid would do? Honestly, it looks better than some tattoos I've seen. It's just a weird design, like kind of feathered. That's not a wound. It's not a bruise. They just smeared some makeup on there. My point being, if this is fake, and let's see, I believe that was it Buzz? Was it Buzz Aldrin who gave the petrified elephant dung to the government of Holland? Yeah, moon rock given to Holland by Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong is fake. Like, at what point do you just stop having Stockholm syndrome and saying, well, yeah, maybe they faked the moon rock. Maybe they fake asteroids. Maybe they faked the moon because they had to trick the Russians, but this is real. Oh, the space station's real. I mean, at some point, the house of cards just has to fall. Moon rock given to Holland by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin is fake. But the moon landing was real, right? Unbelievable. And they are very sensitive about their moon rocks. Do you remember NASA's SWAT team? Got to be careful talking about moon rocks around NASA. If they're listening, they'll send a SWAT team to your house. Look at this. Why this grandmother is taking on NASA over a moon rock gift from Neil Armstrong. This is from 2011. Her name was Joan Davis. Basically, she needed money for her grandchild's surgery, and the only way she could think of to make money was to sell her moon rock that her husband got from Neil Armstrong as a gift. The moon rock was the size of a piece of like rice, a grain of rice, and it was inside of a paperweight. So she tried to sell it to NASA, and instead of explaining to her, you can't just sell it, they said, meet us at Denny's. She got to Denny's, she brought the thing with her, and it says here, she unknowingly met with law enforcement officers at Denny's. They seized the 75-year-old and the paperweight because all lunar material is property of the federal government and possession is a crime. So if you didn't know, it's actually a crime to possess moon rock. So if you purchased any on eBay, I wouldn't talk about it. But anyway, it says here, the 75-year-old woman who tried to sell the paperweight may try to hold federal agents liable for detaining her for 2 hours in a parking lot in urine-soaked pants. So they held her there. And of course, the other side of the story, the other aspect of it too, is that it was an actual SWAT team. So NASA has a SWAT team. NASA's SWAT team detains 75-year-old. Granny roughed up in moon rock raid, CBC News. 25 years of curating moon rocks. I had no idea that it was that much of a crime until recently, but yeah. All right, let's continue. And by the way, the moon rocks that I think they were giving away, they supposedly found them in Antarctica, because that makes sense. What, they fall off the moon and land on the bottom of the Earth or something? Okay, I'm going through the rest of my notes here. This is a great one. I've got to read it, though. The European Commission wrote an 18-page report on, quote, far-right humor. So they have these books. Like, do you remember back? I had this book. It was actually like a police guide. It was called The Satan Hunter. And it was a guide for police or law enforcement to find satanic gangs. And this was like during the Satanic Panic. So it was like if you find Black Sabbath albums and, you know, candle wax on a shoe and a 5-pointed star, it means this. It was one of these ridiculous kind of like sensationalistic books, or guidebooks on how to hunt down these Satanist cults. And this was during the Satanic Panic, which is kind of like it's kind of resurfaced with the QAnon thing. But anyway, the new devil of the day is the far right extremist. And now they're just like, I mean, I thought the ADL was bad. They're like, AOK symbol is not, now it used to be what AOK was AOK. And then it was 666. Now it's white power. Bowl cuts, hate crimes. You know, it's a hate crime to cut your hair that way. It means that you're in solidarity with school shooters. But it says here, a humor and far-right extremism, a primer. While it is a truism that extremist movements are only successful if they speak the language of the masses, researchers and practitioners have been repeatedly overwhelmed by the new guises that extremist communication adopts in the digital era. So they're overwhelmed by the memes. The most potent weapon known to mankind are satire and ridicule. Now that's out of civil rights activist Saul Alinsky from Rules for Radicals, a book dedicated to Lucifer. This was the guy who I believe was a mentor to Obama. But anyway, his book is actually pretty good. It does, I mean, if you read it, you'll understand how Antifa works, how they are constantly polarizing people into groups, the oppressor, the oppressed, good guys, bad guys. Oh, we're the Antifa, so we can't be fascists, right? Well, anyway, he wrote this down. The most important weapons are satire and ridicule. But it's interesting because he was a lefty or commie. But this is all stuff being used by the right. It says, humor is very attractive for extremist groups because it affects emotions, cognition, and communication. Humor reduces interpersonal barriers. This is why they don't like memes. They are definitely trying to censor memes. I've seen talk with a lot of these political leaders about how, you know, you shouldn't even be talking to people in public because that will spread the virus. Like, this is really what we're looking at here is the pandemic was to stop the flow of unregulated memes. Far-right extremism and online culture, right, because there's no far left. Memes are units of cultural meaning. Like, what are they going to start doing? Burning memes? Like, what are you going to do? You know, print them out, make a big stack. I often wonder, though, if you were to take all of the deleted YouTube comments and then print them into books, how tall of a building would you need to house physical copies of all of the digitally burned books? And for videos, just a transcription of it. You know, you would have a tower, you know, probably reaching the Kármán line of just books that they've burned. I wanted to actually create a digital library, just kind of to replicate this, you know, to scale, and then have it burned, you know, animated as an art piece. Just a tribute to all of this destroyed culture. All right, so the dog meme is one of the most, Doge meme is one of the most famous internet memes. It's been adapted. Now, this isn't a manual to spot extremism. So now this Dogecoin thing is an extremist thing. It's been adapted in various ways to tease a kind of outdated humor. In far-right circles, it's been combined with Nazi memorabilia to trivialize the violence of the SS. So can somebody point to me somewhere where the Dogecoin, the Doge doggy, has been conflated with Hitler? I have not seen a swastika on that thing yet. Digital hate culture. The creation of sharing of memes as a ritual of an imaginary community can foster a feeling of collective belonging to those who participate in these dispersed online networks. They're trying to say that your meme friends aren't your real friends. That's what they're trying to say here. Oh, a ritual of an imaginary community? I would invite everyone listening here for a mere $2 to join the Infinite Plane Society Discord server where we make memes around the clock. And it's not fake. It's not an imaginary community. It's real. The think tank is real. The evolution of ideas is real. What we're doing is actual content creation. Again, here's a link here. Patreon.com/Infinite Plane Society. $2 a month. If that's too much, just $2. I won't kick you out of the Discord server. Just get in the door. It's like a cover charge to get in the club. And what we do there is nonstop research, memes, animation, and the like. But what they're talking about here is unregulated culture, unregulated by the NWO mono cult. So they're trying to say that these aren't your real friends. Like the people in the chat, oh no, it's an imaginary community. But you can trust, the ones on the other side of the screen, if it's, from CNN or Fox or one of those. It says it can foster a feeling of collective belonging. In this way, overtly humorous and harmless everyday images shape political worldviews and opinion forming in the pre-political space. And it's because they know, and this is from Saul Alinsky as well, that politics is downstream from culture. And the controllers of the mass media hate the fact that you're having any input in culture, because that's where they're trying to prep you for their garbage that they're going to present to you in the news later. Let's move on. Far-right actors have adapted to the ways of thinking and expression in social networks, and politics must be entertaining to break the boredom. So since we're not boring, and if they're not boring, if memes aren't boring, they're a threat to the system. Because they want to monopolize the ability to captivate the attention. They want a captive audience. And they had it for 2020. When you were in lockdown, you were pretty much a captive audience, insofar as they were able to censor alternative channels. This channel doesn't get censored, even though we're frequently shut down, but we have so many redundancies. And one of the ways, and they hate this, one of the ways that I keep YouTube going, one of the ways I keep this channel going is I keep it going 24/7. And what that does is it makes it impossible to process and therefore censor. They can't even digest it. All right, let's see here. Zareth says, Hunter's money laundering posters are worth every penny he gets to give to his brother, President Beau Biden. Yeah, there is a theory that Joe Biden is being played by Beau in a mask, and that Beau fake died at 46 to become President 46. Not unbelievable, if you ask me. Oh, yes, I did set up an auction site if anybody wants to go take a look. And look, here's what I'm going to do with it. I just barely got started with it, but I was kicked off of eBay after 42 sales, all 5-star ratings, no explanation. And it's because I want to start painting memes in particular. And that's probably what got... It's because it's hard to censor products. It's hard to censor memes. I even tried this. Here's a drawing of mine. This is Anthony Fauci. By the way, spell his name backward. ICUAF, Dr. Ikoff. Here's a link. I'm going to be creating a lot of meme art. I'll take requests. So if you have anything you want me to draw, or mostly draw, not so much painting anymore. I prefer to just keep it ink, but I'm putting them all on these auction sites, and all of the auctions start off at $1, and it has a buy now option. I won't put too much time on that promoting it, but it's in the chat. You can find it also at infiniteplanesociety.com. Just scroll down for the auction link. Those are the first ones. I have plenty more. Lickety Split says McAfee should call in. Does anybody think McAfee's alive or dead? What's the story? I mean, I find it peculiar that he would be alive and there wouldn't be any investigation into whoever faked his autopsy report. I mean, this would mean a whole new level of conspiracy, because it would imply that he didn't fool a lot of people. I mean, there's just too many people to be involved. I'm sorry, at this point, I just can't say he's alive. What's our reason for thinking he's alive anyway? Well, I guess one thing that's a little fishy is the suicide note, but that only suggests that maybe he was murdered. But there's a few things about his recent, the dead man switch that make me think that that has nothing to do with him. I'll still look into it. If anybody has anything new, in fact, let me check the voicemails. I think I had someone here who had a little bit of information.
Hi, it's me again. I really think it's important that I tell you that Joe Biden is associated with the Irish Mafia.
Okay, different call. I may go into this one. Joe Biden is associated with Irish Mafia, and there's quite a lot there, but I'm looking for some of these messages that were left about McAfee. Let's see what we have here.
Hey, Tim, I don't know if you've heard about the picture going around where Mike Lindell had a ring on his finger that was supposedly associated with the Knights Templar, or some kind of Knights Templar. See, I don't think that whole story of him being a crackhead turned billionaire, it's all fake.
Yeah, okay. So he's suggesting Mike Lindell's transformation from crackhead to billionaire is a fake story. And yeah, he does have a Templar ring. I saw that. Okay, here's another message. I'm looking for some of the McAfee tips, if we have any here. Here's another one.
The ongoing discussion with McAfee, there's a lot of evidence that is out there that points to McAfee being Rusty Shackelford. And we all know that McAfee lived in Belize for a while and visited the Cayman Islands and all those islands around there, which is awfully close to Epstein's Island. So I would think that there's a decent chance that the two are the same. McAfee also said he was spying on the government for years through computers he gave through secretaries. I think that's worthy to be touched on in the...
Yeah, that is true. McAfee did kind of brag about, there's a sort of retaliation, donating computers as a way to entrap. And so he did claim to be the head spy master. In fact, I'm on his new Telegram. I'm just not convinced it's him. Because if it is him, then he's QAnon. Because all of his posts recently have just been totally cryptic. In fact, let me go over some of these. I don't want to sound like I didn't research it. I didn't get bored of it. I spent hours and hours on it. I just didn't arrive at any conclusions. McAfee's Telegram cryptically hints 38 days. Now, a few things I did notice. He mentioned flood quite a bit. Talked about information warfare. And one reason why I think this might be worth noting too is he does talk about some topical things like Arizona. And again, we're just a few weeks away from this symposium. But let me take a quick look here at this McAfee Telegram account. Okay, here's something else, and I think a caller the other night brought this up. He wasn't a biblical guy. If you watch the way he lived, he slept underneath a hammock. He did things to a dead whale. So it's strange that half of his Telegram posts are biblical verses. And behold, I bring a flood of waters upon the earth. I'm sorry, but I'm just not really convinced it could be him. He says, all the right people are scared. They should be 38 days time is not real, time equals light. So this is like something that would appeal to the QAnon shaman. Like, when did McAfee become a QAnon shaman? I'm not into the shamanism stuff. What do you mean time is light, time is not real? McAfee's frustratingly cryptic Telegram posts suggest he may in fact be Q. Here's one that wasn't too difficult to decode. CIA is here. Risk is this week for God and country. I mean, lame, I'm sorry. So I wasn't able to make anything of it. A lot of people went down this rabbit trail. I am not convinced that there's anything at the end of it, but I'll continue to look. Oh, this is great. I love it when the media eats its own. Here's TMZ, a fake news company, reporting on fake news. Reporter in Germany smears mud on herself, pretending to help flood cleanup. It's the same media that gets miffed when social media influencers pretend like they're in the flood for clout, and they get caught doing the same thing. And so I'm going to play this clip. So here you have a reporter, and apparently off camera, someone had noticed that she was smearing mud on herself. I guess it's for dramatic effect. Fake news is fake. But, you know, this is just one layer of it. It's like, oh yeah, they'll fake it by putting a little bit of mud on their face, but no way they would fake tears. No way they would fake blood. Well, blood. They've never actually faked tears. Well, maybe once. There was one crisis actor with tears. Only one. And it was this year, in fact. It was, let me see if I can find it. So basically, you had a crisis actor at the guided tour / bad performance art. They called it an insurrection. So at the insurrection, there was an actress, or crisis actress, who had tears in her eyes, but I believe it was like an onion she had. She had an onion in a Kleenex. Let's see if I can find that. Now, as far as that fake insurrection goes, we do have some new clips that should already have been mainstreamed, but they buried these things. These are some clips of some agent provocateurs in the audience. So here's a provocateur. This is actually on the 5th. So this is the day before.
We're going to go to jail tomorrow. We need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol.
So emphatically saying we need to go into the Capitol tomorrow, again and again, and people are just basically disputing it. And then you have others who are involved in it. We all know it's not a conspiracy theory. They were a bunch of MSM actors. CNN did the insurrection, if you want to be honest about it. And I think there was a 7-to-1 ratio of insurrectionists to cameramen. In other words, for every insurrectionist out there boldly posing, you had 7 cameramen. Let's see here, going through comments. Zara says, low IQ people believe in Q. Well, I don't know. I mean, look, I don't want to broad brush, but I will say that believing in anonymous sources is highly illogical. Check this out. The individual who shot Ashley Babbitt. Now, Ashley Babbitt is not dead. It's not even her real name, if you ask me. It's a psyop. That has been taken apart. I went over this last week. I think the video is called Everything Wrong with the Capitol Shooting in 21 Minutes or Less. I'll put a link to this video in the chat if you haven't seen it. Must watch. Bookmark it. Everything Wrong with the Capitol Shooting in 21 Minutes or Less. And what you'll find here is that the Capitol shooting was a choreographed piece of performance art, that nobody actually got shot. And I pointed this out. I said, she's got padding. She's wearing a backpack beneath the cape. And then you actually see them smearing the fake blood. There's continuity errors. And you have this one individual here who dips his hand. He touches her nose, right? It looks, this guy, I don't know who he is. He might be an influencer. He looks like Kyle Rittenhouse. Anyway, he dips his hand in this supposed victim on the ground, bleeding in her blood, and he comes outside and he starts waving his hand around, and he says to everyone, "Look what you did with your right-wing anger and hatred. You know, you caused someone to die." Let's see if I can find a picture of his hand. It's just bad writing, and when you actually look at it all in context, and this is the character who does it, looks like Kyle. Is that Kyle? You can actually see the setup. I'm just going to put the link in the chat. You get to watch it for yourself because it's a slow motion, frame by frame breakdown of a psychological operation. So knowing that it's fake, we have to ask ourselves, why is Donald Trump making a martyr? Why is he trying to make her into a martyr for this cause? Ashley Babbitt, martyr for the right wing. Well, they've identified him after Trump called. He said, "I want to know who did this." He called for the guy and wanted his name. His name is Michael Leroy Bird. His life was not in danger. It's all a lie to cover up a crime. That's the new story. Now, his life wasn't in danger. He capped her from across the room. And if you actually look at the breakdown of the shooting, it makes very little sense. And people who are looking at this are saying, why would he have used a gun, a hand cannon, in a situation where handcuffs would have been in order? Or bear mace. But no, he went straight to the pistol, and there were other people in the line of fire. Other officers that could have been shot had the bullet gone through her head or whatever. And Trump was like, they shot her in the head. No, it was the neck. Or the squib was in the neck. But anyway, I think it's interesting that this fake shooter of this fake victim, and these are all encoded names. Ashley Babbitt, wrapped in the American flag. Yeah, obvious reference to the book Babbitt, Lewis Sinclair. The lady that got trampled to death with the flag that says, "Don't tread on me." These are inside jokes. This guy's name, Michael Leroy Bird, I don't think it's a coincidence that MLB or BLM backward is encoded in his name, because this is all part of this dynamic they've set up. BLM versus Western Derek chauvinism. All right, let's continue. Going through my Minds account. Somebody found some symbolism in a couple of movies. Power Book 3, Raising Canaan, and the History Channel. Nothing new here, but every mainstream movie, every mainstream production is part of the cult of the obelisk. It's a carefully curated version of reality intended for mass consumption. So nothing new here. Here's a clip from a movie called Ant Bully, awash with one eye Illuminati stuff, Masonic stuff. Nothing to see here. Oh, this is nice too. Vax apartheid. Unvaccinated passengers and fully vaccinated. Who didn't see this coming? It's brainwashed or unbrainwashed. It's like, yeah, sure. I'll go with the unbrainwashed. No argument here. Oh, by the way, I have these new t-shirts. They're not new. I put these out before. You can't trust the plan. We know that. It's an old fake anti-commie resistance movement to entrap the right wing. But you can trust the Infinite Plane Society. This is t-shirt. It says, trust the Infinite Plane Society, but I highlighted trust the plan. So if you've lost faith in Q, you can trust IPR. IPR drops have been far more accurate. We're not a rolling prophecy club that always pushes our dates back. The Common Sense Show. Biden has opened the door for the UN to move into America prior to World War III. Well, World War III has already started. It's the ongoing perpetual war on the individual by the state, by the oligarchs. But I do think that there's a lot of hype about UN troops, FEMA coffins, and all this stuff. But I'd like to remind people that your living room is the FEMA camp. And they've already shown that if they want everybody in lockdown, they can do it. Here's an interesting development. So do you remember I was talking about incels? Okay, so after 9/11, which was a 19-year template for terror, now we have COVID for 19 years. So after 9/11, you had a certain story emerge about these terrorist cells, sexually repressed. They want to destroy the great Satan, go to heaven, get their 72 virgins. They want to destroy the West and put all women in burqas. You know, it's a caricature of this idea of these radical Islamists, which have all just been feds, basically. Well, they created this caricature and then they run all these psyops based off of it. They introduce contact tracing, where it's like, well, where did you get this violent meme from? You got it from the Quran, which has been replaced by QAnon, which is where you get your violent verses today, which turn you against the great Satan, or against Hollywood in particular, or the Democrats. Same thing. Evil, satanic pedophiles in high places. So then I'm just suggesting it's the same exact story. So the radicalized terrorists, they blow themselves up and they're trying to change the world for this caliphate. Well, the new system are the radicalized incels. These are the new terrorists. And now it's being discussed as these incels want to have an uprising and they want to convert all women back into being the type of women they want them to be. So how women-hating incels are plotting World War III so men can take back society. Goes on to say they want to take back society from feminism and degeneracy. This is exactly what the Islamists were trying to do. Holy war. The Holy War narrative has been reborn in this sense. And it's the incel terrorist shooters. So you have this new shooter, and his name is Trey Genko 21. He plotted to slaughter 3,000 sorority girls. Now, does that number 3,000 ring a bell? 9/11. So this is just your new 9/11, your QAnon radicals. You get contact traced. It's like, well, did you go to a mosque in Yemen? We've got to find out where you got that violent verse from. The idea, I think, it's just like with this COVID thing. You know, it's about mind viruses, but they've replaced the mind virus with the physical virus. Everything we're seeing is just such a repeat. Incel-related violence. Do they get virgins? Like if they blow themselves up after committing atrocities, do these bowl cuts get virgins in heaven? And where are the female mass shooters, by the way? There hasn't been a single female mass shooting. Like they don't do it. Incel-related violence has been linked to 53 deaths in recent years, statistics show. One of the most popular incel forums say that the members want to reset society. So now everyone's getting in this reset game. So this is all about Western society, basically the great Satan. Quote, "It's no secret that Western society's been ruined by feminism. Straight white men get no respect." The user continued that women are ungrateful to men. It's only get worse. Incels on the rise. This is absurd. And you know what's worse about this is that they're calling it the black pill. Have you ever heard of the black pill? It's too bad because there's actually a pretty good set of podcasts, the Black Pill podcast and Black Pill Radio. Well, the black pill, according to the mass media, is the incel pill. The incel community is self-reinforcing and self-radicalizing, with members believing that their looks or their personal traits have condemned them to loneliness. They refer to women as female humanoid organisms or foids. This radical ideology is black pill thinking. Red pill, which is in their vernacular, is something they've moved past. The black pill lets them see the harsh truth of the world. It's fatalistic, and those embracing black pill thinking believe that there's no possibility of circumventing the female prejudice to attractive men in status. That's insane. Elliot Rodger is something of an incel martyr. This kind of reminds me of all these movies that they used to have. You know those movies like in the slasher films? If you think about it, the slasher films were always the incels, where they would go to the party, where the attractive guys would get the sorority girls, the incel would be mad, and they would kill the attractive guys. Like, this is an old story, and I think it's fake. And what's more, Elliot Rodger, if you get into this character, first of all, his father, and his performance was terrible. Elliot Rodger was trying to do this American Psycho talking to the camera thing, ridiculously unbelievable. But his father, and we talked about the Hunger Games earlier after that one caller, we brought it up. His father was the Hunger Games assistant director, Peter Rogers. And his grandfather was involved in World War II concentration camp photography. So, interesting family. If you think about, being involved in war photography, something like the Hunger Games, and then a psyop in Palo Alto. Hilariously done. I mean, the actors were the worst. The actresses were hilarious. The sorority girls were like trying to describe the horror, and they couldn't stop laughing. One of them was like, if I could find those clips, they all said it sounded like pop, pop, pop. Do you remember the pop, pop, pop memes? How many of you here were auto-hoaxing Elliot Rodgers? Thinks he's a truther says, is that dude even white? Right, interesting point. Yeah, does he even represent that? Elliot Rodgers called for a war on women. It doesn't make sense. It's like, okay, so he can't get any girlfriends, so he wants to kill all the girls. It's like, doesn't that even reduce his chances more? He's complaining that they had no attraction towards him. This is another one. This is a Toronto incel shooter. All hail the supreme gentleman, Elliot Rodger. Now, in my experience, from my observation, whenever you have a mass shooter reference another shooter, it's fake. They all exist in the same fictional universe. This was very pronounced recently. How many of you saw the King Soopers shooter? And if you're a believer in mass shootings, you won't be for long if you keep following this channel. The King Soopers shooting of 322. Now, we woke up that day saying, this is a super day for a psyop. Because 322, Skull and Bones Society. Well, on that date, King Soopers in Boulder, specifically store number 33, was shot up by a mass shooter. There were 33 union workers who were at the store that were shot at. Most of the victims were there for their COVID shots, but they got the AR-15 instead. It was like this. It was meant to be an irony. Like the media's like, they went there for their COVID shot and they got the AR-15 shot. It's like the psyops never end. But anyway, this shooter at King Soopers claimed he was doing it in retaliation for the Christchurch shooting. Brent and Tarrant. So you had basically a retaliation shooting. It was like a Muslim shooting to get back at the white power guy shooting. And then that's how connected these events are. Then at the same time, you had the shootings in Atlanta, the parlor shootings, where you had another incel shooting up. Well, no, he wasn't an incel. He wasn't celibate, but he was a misogynist. So you had a sexist shooter with a fashy haircut shooting Asians in these targeted shootings at multiple locations. Now, do you remember the way that they arrested the guy in Christchurch? They did a pit maneuver, meaning they ran him off the road and pulled him out of his car. Well, it happened to be the case that the police in Christchurch that day were doing drills on pit maneuvers. So when the shooter comes driving down the road, they were already doing a drill for it. They were able to just quickly run him off the road and pull him out of the car. And there was somebody there who videotaped it who happened to be an actress out there. I mean, that whole thing was so fake. But my point is, the way that they got the parlor shooter off the road was a pit maneuver. After he did a multiple location shooting. The Georgia State Patrol used a pursuit intervention technique on Tuesday to stop the suspect. So what's fascinating is this event was on the anniversary of Christchurch, and it was a templated event. Targeted demographic of immigrants, multiple locations, followed by a pit maneuver. There's a few more details about the story that are, I think, very intriguing. But my point being, all of these events reference one another in ways that are far beyond coincidence. Like, you know that 50 of the people who were shot at the Las Vegas shooting at the Harvest Festival on August 1st of 2017, 50 of the same people were shot at again at the Borderline Bar and Grill shooting, which was 13 months later. So you tell me, if this is believable to you. See, the Thousand Oaks shooting, look, they survived Vegas. Then came the second mass shooting. When the first shots were fired at Borderline Bar and Grill, look, this person says, I was at the Las Vegas mass shooting, as well as 50 or 60 others. This whole thing, and it gets even worse. So, and you can look this up, you can fact check it, even though these aren't real facts because we're talking about fake news, but 50 people shot at one event are all shot at again 13 months later. And then to make it even less believable, down the street from the Borderline shooting, there was a drill being conducted. So you have the Borderline shooting, and then down the street there's a drill. The drill, which was about a couple blocks away, involved, they said, 50 crisis actors. So what are the odds that you're going to have a crisis actor convention, a drill, down the street from a shooting? And what's more, the drill was based on Vegas. It just shows you it's all big operation. Thomas Groin says the Mockingbird, Wag the Dog, Matrix reality is getting more over-the-top crazy and absurd. Yeah, well, or maybe it's just us. I think it might just be us. Like, it's always been this absurd. It always has been, but nobody ever pointed it out before. Marcel says, what do you think of the last post on the Mcafee Telegram? Now, which Telegram is it? There's two. There's Mcafee Afterlife, and then there's the one that I was pointing out. So let me know which one. By the way, this channel, like I said, we've been pointing these fake things out forever. I went out to Aurora, Colorado, after they put up this monument to the Aurora shooting, the Joker shooting. And this is just, to me, this is just how, I don't know what you call it. It's just manipulation. So you have the Aurora shooting, and they put up a monument, which was basically a bunch of swans made into something of a pyramid. They call it the 720 Memorial Foundation. And it honors the 13 lives and 70 people wounded. So I was actually out there in the area shortly after they had the inaugural opening of this event, of this monument. They had this ceremonial opening, and they explained what it all meant, and then people were just supposed to go in and check it out. So when I drove by it, I saw a lot of people kind of milling about, and I thought, wow, all these people were affected by this psyop. It's like they can't all be actors. So then I got closer, and nobody was really looking at the thing. This was right outside of their courthouse there, and what was happening was there was a massive Pokemon hunt going on that day. So the city had sponsored a Pokemon hunt next to this mass shooting memorial, so that anybody driving by that day would see people milling about, looking at their phones, like they're sobbing over pictures or something. No, they're hunting Pokemons. I mean, it looked good from the outside. Nope, there's no Batman statue. That would have been cool. Oh, by the way, I was live streaming my criticism of the thing, and at the back there was a rock, and they had a dedication to someone who had helped pull the thing off, some city employee or whatever. But anyway, my live stream was cut off, like in the middle of my criticism of this monument. They shut my channel down. That's what I mean by this channel's hated. Thinks he's a truther says, I was wounded by dangerous misinformation. You can catch it, you know that, right? You can catch flat earth and drive off the edge. That's what they'll have you believe. Doesn't matter if it's real or fake. Nope, if it's unregulated, I mean. It's not like you arrive at things. You don't arrive at conclusions through logic or reason. Nope. Oh, hey, earlier we were talking about Grimes, the wife of Musk, the parents of baby Yucky. I love their names, Musky, Yucky, Grimy. Anyway, she's talking about communism. Well, now, Musk makes a big show about selling his $82 billion mansion or whatever, and he's moved into this shack. Have you seen this? This is all posturing, like the Pope pretending like he doesn't like living in opulence. It's all posturing. Let's see, Matt182 says, the other McAfee one has comments allowed and noteworthy breaks from character. Yeah, that one's fake. The other one, I'm still kind of... Okay, let me check out the McAfee Afterlife one. And I believe I have all of the relevant links on my page. By the way, the forum is open, infiniteplane.media. If there's anything you want us to discuss that we haven't discussed, you can probably find it here in the forums. Just find a thread or start one. We have quite a lot here. I have a thread here about the Dead Man's Switch, and I believe I have all the relevant links there. But let me take a look at the McAfee Afterlife. I just think it's unlikely. Okay, here we go. It's unlikely that he would be posting on Telegram in these cryptic ways that aren't really telling us anything. Like this. Howling 814-812, the arrival 1111, are you ready? Immortality is yours, take it. What are we supposed to believe here? Like, what are we being told to expect? He says, justice will prevail, every lie will be revealed. The apocalypse, my children, it's time to turn to God. Like, did McAfee have a come to God moment? Did he ever turn to God anytime? Before he, did he convert? The last I saw, like I said, he was sleeping under a hammock and doing things to dead whales. Let's take a look at this latest post. It says, media is too big. What's behind this picture? What's this video? If someone could just look at it for me, and I'll get to it later. I'm not into the shaman thing, the QAnon shaman, or shamanism. I'm going to play this clip again. I played this earlier. This is Michael Flynn, presented with a rifle in Yuba, California, who's making jokes about political assassinations in D.C.
That's awesome.
And tell us about your gift.
So we were trying to come up with a rifle that we thought was appropriate for a general. So we went with the old school woodland camouflage. So anyhow, this is one of our top quality guns.
Okay, now listen to what General Flynn, who at the last such meeting, somebody said, why can't we just kick Biden out and put Trump back in? He says, I don't see why not. Paraphrasing. He's constantly throwing accelerant onto this fire, and he won't get arrested for this. If I said what he said, I would be in jail. And there's a few others I could name, provocateurs who say things all the time that would get you flagged, demonetized, jailed. Listen to this.
Maybe I'll find somebody in Washington, D.C.
Maybe I'll find someone in Washington, D.C. I mean, that's
awesome.
And tell us about your gift.
Okay, so there you have it. Michael Flynn flippantly joking about, I suppose, taking somebody out. Take somebody out at a time like this when we have a contested election. And right now, as far as I can see, there's two presidents. Does anybody else have that idea? Do you have that feeling that we have two presidents right now? User Offline says McAfee is another QAnon psyop. He might even be QAnon, or part of it probably, but it's strange, though, that a dead man would be appropriated this way. Like, don't the people doing this LARPing feel bad about it? Matt M says, Q nonsense, the man proudly lived amongst a harem of 7 women. Sure. Well, you know who else? But there's others who have doubted his death. There was a neighbor. Rather, the sister of a neighbor thinks that McAfee's alive and that he escaped. And this is the neighbor who was murdered after being tased in the face by John Mcafee or somebody John Mcafee ordered to do so in retaliation for the neighbor supposedly giving tainted meat to John's violent, unruly dogs that were wandering around. And he escaped the police by burying himself in the sand with a box over his head. Like, that's the story, but One Step Too Far says he found out about the extinction level event coming out on August 11th. Okay, Matt M says one of his slightly earlier posts shows a divorce paper with who we believe to be his wife. Right. The thing is, if his death is fake, then she's playing a role and she's doing some misdirection on, purposefully. Okay, what's this extinction level event? I mean, they're always being reported. TMZ just said when it was going to happen, so probably. Here we go. An asteroid-related, extinction-related event. You know that COVID was originally blamed on an asteroid called C-19? No, a comet, rather. It was a comet. I think earlier it said asteroid. It was a comet they called Atlas, has some interesting things about it. A bright comet is approaching Earth. Here's how you can see it. Comet Atlas. Like the ominous opening of the Game of Thrones. A comet may be visible with the naked eye in late April, early May. So this was C 2019 Comet Atlas. And there was talk of this thing possibly breaking apart. What's interesting to me about it, one, the green thing, color symbolism, because COVID is just a cover for this green revolution anyway. But first of all, Atlas, the book Atlas Shrugged is about the world being shut down in much the way that it was shut down last year. But there was some talk that was quickly shut down about the comet having been the source of COVID-19. It says here, star points. Did COVID-19 come from space? Comments on the origin and spread of the virus led this team to conclude that, yeah, maybe it came from this. Was COVID-19 created to distract us from a doomsday asteroid? Anyway, lots of these stories were being teased around the time that it arrived, and I thought that's interesting. Another C-19. All right, let us continue. I'm not really a believer in this McAfee thing being legitimate, but I am following it. So if anything does develop, I will post it. You'll hear about it here first. Representative Ronnie Jackson, ex-White House doctor, says Biden will be forced to resign. I've seen a lot of talk like that. If that's the case, it's probably an act so that we get, what, is it President Pelosi or Harris? Who gets in first? Look, critics are slamming Biden for sucking the blood out of kids. Comment after a town hall. He has been getting some flack for these comments. Biden, are there people in the Republican Party who think that we're sucking the blood out of kids? I thought this was just such a strange, out of context thing to say, considering that nobody's talking about adrenochrome anymore. But, well, except for Biden now. Here's a clip if you hadn't heard it.
Can you clarify what you said about no one in the Democratic Party is anti-police? I know that you have said you don't want to defund the police.
That is not the Democratic Party's position.
Okay.
I'm the Democratic Party. I am president. So is the Speaker of the House, and so is
Anyway, after a few minutes of confusion, he jumps into the blood part.
Majority leader. We are not defunding the police. We have
are
not.
there people who in the Democratic Party who want to defund the president?
Are there people in the Republican Party who think we're sucking the blood out of kids?
Party who wants to defund
People in the Republican Party who think we're sucking the blood out of kids?
Again, very, very strange, but well within his character. Not the strangest thing he said. I mean, nothing's going to top the thing about the cockroach legs. Remember the thing about the swimming pool and the cockroach legs? I mean, he said some pretty strange things. I'm like, man, is he doing some father-son bonding with Hunter? Is that what we're seeing here? Little crack? I don't know what it is, but commenter says that's what someone who sucks blood out of kids would say. Right, I mean, it's on the tip of his tongue, in other words. Like, it's not even in my lexicon. I don't walk around just flippantly mentioning something like that. Ivar says, Biden and corn pop sucking the blood from kids. Yeah, the corn pop story might have been the beginning of this. His decline. I don't know if it's an act anymore at this point. Almost seems like there's no control, especially after that comment earlier today. Thomas says, defunding the police is a good thing. The police work for the deep state system. Interesting point. Hadn't heard it phrased that way. But the people who want to defund the police happen to be a bunch of, advocates for communism and statism, which is another form of police state. So it's like, well, a boot on the face is a boot on the face. They're replacing one system with I don't know if I trust their intentions, in other words. Like, do you trust their intentions? The peaceful protesters? That would be my starting point. It's Orwellian from the get-go. Now, I don't know what you all think about this Arizona audit, but here you have Liz Harrington saying that they have 275,000 potential fraudulent ballots in just one county. This is, again, not going to go away. 8, 9, 10, and 11 is the Cyber Symposium. Take a listen.
Of 18,000 voters who were purged from the voter rolls, who voted in the election but were purged after the election. And here's a significant one, Brett, if I could bring up that Maricopa County will not touch. 3,981 people voted despite registering after the October 15th court-ordered deadline. And here's the key question. That means Maricopa County certified false results. And if we still have a free country with one set of rules for every American, those votes need to be thrown out immediately.
Okay, so it's not going away. The media, of course, has derided it, marginalized it, but it's not over yet. So it'll be really interesting to see. And also on 8/11, keep in mind we have this national emergency broadcast alert to look forward to. I have another voicemail I want to play. This is from today.
Hey, Tim. I just forgot I should probably be telling you this, that, I'm on the chats on other times than when the show is being aired. And I've found myself talking to a lot of different people, a lot of new people. So this message is a good and a bad one. I think you're doing a great job. Your hard work is paying off, and I can tell what you're doing. And at the same time, I think it's attracting a lot of people that, as you say, might, kick you off or set some alarms off or something like that. I don't know. I spent some time convincing someone about infinite plane and all that stuff, and try to play both sides and find a baseline. But I don't know how to go about this, and I think that's kind of maybe in another email or something.
Yeah, what he's talking about is the think tank. So we have the 24/7 stream, and yes, we do get a good mix of individuals in the chat, and that's kind of the point. We started this channel when I first started the channel, in fact, I didn't even have anything on the screen. It was a blank screen, and the focus was just the chat room, which we called the think tank. And we were always being inundated with trolls and disruptors, so I started issuing out wrenches to everybody in the chat room if they were on our side. In other words, they adhered to the rules. And it's not about agreement, but it's about manners, more or less. And then when somebody who wasn't affiliated would come in the room, there'd be several hundred people ready to ban them. And then, of course, if you were banned, you could be pulled out later with a request. But we quality controlled the hell out of these chat rooms with the wrench. And that's why when you look at the channel and the artwork, you're constantly seeing these penguins with wrenches. Yeah, it represents the moderator's wrench. It's the force that's required, to maintain peace and harmony. And it's worked wonderfully. And we took that same concept of offering moderators into Discord. In fact, I kind of think that the Discord concept of having these moderators and vetting people probably had its genesis in these chat rooms where people were trying to use these, whatever they gave you, tools to kind of to create your own little community there. One Step Too Far says, John Podesta is Chester Bennington's biological father. Start there. And look at Mike Shinoda's 100% definitely, totally, absolutely, unequivocally unrelated philanthropic charitable work. I was looking into that John Podesta thing, and the other day I was driving and I passed by some kind of like children's, youth, and families or something, and I noticed they had a sculpture out front of the logo of the triangle and the triangle. And I want to find out, is it true that spirals and triangles and all these designs are indeed, pedo symbols or whatever? Because somebody had pointed out the Colin Kaepernick flavored Ben & Jerry's ice cream. It's not even ice cream, it's a dessert, it's non-dairy. But someone had pointed out that there's a symbol on there that is a Pizzagate symbol. And I'm looking, and yeah, there is a little spiral, but there's a point where it's like, is every shape the devil? Is every star, every polygon just inherently evil? We can't draw spirals anymore? Is pizza just ruined? Now, I haven't been doing the wrench thing on YouTube as of late, just so you know, because they pretty much, I can't, you're not going to believe this, I can't log into any of these channels. So if you're on the YouTube channel now that has 86, I can't log into it. The one with 73 people watching, I can't log into that one. But I can stream on them using the software with the streaming keys. So I was kicked out of those Gmail accounts a long time ago. Yeah, I have lots of Gmail accounts that have been shut down because of YouTube accounts that have been shut down. So if you lose 3 YouTube accounts, you lose your Gmail. I mean, it's insane. When you get into the numbers here, I have a spreadsheet that I had to send to YouTube's legal department to show them that, yeah, I had 100 channels taken down with false claims of copyright violation. All right, let us continue. I'll look into this thing. I'm not ruling anything out at this point, but I do prefer that we have, evidence to substantiate extraordinary claims. And that's where the Pizzagators tend to have a lot of innuendo. There's a lot to build narrative, but we still haven't seen, frazzle drip. That would be the next thing that I need to see. And if you don't know what frazzle drip is, that would be Hillary Clinton's face mask. Made out of, supposedly, purportedly ripped off of somebody's face and put onto her face. A few other quick things I want to go over before we turn it over to the 24/7 stream. A lot of these things we'll break down later. We talked about the overview effect, and I wanted to get into this thing. I'm going to introduce it later. You'll probably hear about this soon anyway, the overjaw effect. We've been doing some research into these space agencies, so look forward to a follow-up to Cult of the Obelisk, where I'm going to go into all these different programs, specifically the Virgin Galactic and others, and all of the esoteric symbolism. That's the aspect to this stuff that I think you have to take into account to know just why everything is as crazy as it appears to be. And when TMZ is reporting asteroids, that means that it's going to be believable by the masses. That's like the litmus test. It's like Snopes and TMZ. That's the parameters of the world stage. If it makes it past those two, it's real. If it's not vetted by those two, that's how low the standards of evidence are for this thing. Lickety says there's deeper Pizzagate stuff before it got political. Now, is Cappy dead? Is Isaac Cappy really dead? John says, did you guys know that Jeff Bezos' space dong took off at 9/11? Yes, that's a great point. In fact, I do cover a lot of this, what I would call meta scripting, that shows you that what you're seeing is a scripted part of a much, much bigger story. And yeah, Bezos' launch and the other launch right before it with Virgin were both ritualistic events. The Virgin Galactic launch was on the 42nd anniversary of the Skylab falling, which was a 7/11. And this is all esoteric thelemic symbolism if you care to get into it. But let me just show you one. We'll go into the Babylon working. This was, Jack Parsons. We talked about this earlier. Well, during the Babylon working, they had this star on the ground that they used, their symbol, and it's got these like 7 sevens all over it. And what you'll find is all kinds of interesting combinations of that number. 77 is all over the Skylab falling. 7/11 is the date. You got 77 tons Skylab. But this number, the numerology, is encoded into all these events. So the fact that it would take off at 9/11 is just another example of what I would call metascripting. There's connections like this that connect things like 9/11 to the George Floyd death to the Rodney King beating. I actually have some news clips, I believe, from the Bezos launch. And that one was also, of course, on the anniversary of Apollo 11, which is another very significant ritualistic event. Jeff Bezos launches 69,000 feet higher than Richard Branson, 351,210 feet. So how many miles is that? Anyone care to guess? How many miles did Jeff Bezos go? Oh, 66.6 miles up. Well, 66.517. But, I mean, they're so close. They should have just nudged it, that extra amount there. Almost. And what better symbol, for the Tower of Babel than the CEO of Amazon in the capsule of the rocket? Amazon itself is like the Tower of Babel. The space program, in many ways, represents it. Mankind united in one monolithic cult in a mission from Earth to the heavens. The internet is our unifying language. But, I mean, it's a perfect representation of the Tower of Babel. And I think that's what they're constructing in front of us. And the reason why is because they have to pull it down, as you'll see. Commenter says symbols will be their downfall. I would say so. And they rely on us being symbol illiterate. And those who used to notice patterns and symbols before were called crazy, schizophrenic. Now you're just right. Now you're the guy with all the spoilers, Like, spoiler alert, the conspiracy theorist is talking. John says Q is planted to control the opposition. Sure, I mean, Operation Trust, fake anti-communist movement. And when Parler was hacked, I was convinced. I was like, okay, this seals it. Anybody who's anybody in the anti-communist resistance was on Parler, and they all just doxed themselves. And the way the mass media plays games with words and word magic, it's not a coincidence that they're attacking Parler, the media platform, at the same time that the white racist shooter is shooting up the parlors, the massage parlors. They use these words because it mixes stories when you search, and it's all to control your perception. One Step Too Far says, bingo, Tim. The vid I'll link is exactly what you're looking for. Yeah, send me the link. I appreciate it. And I'll definitely, look, if I don't get to it today, we will get to it later. The number 69 within this entire space cult has everything to do with, well, what they're really about, fertility rights, the mysteries of life and death and reincarnation. It's not just about sex. It's actually much further. There's a few books on the subject. Jack Parsons and the Fall of Babylon. We could really talk about this for hours. The origin of the space program. You know, the first person to have seen a UFO, like documented before Roswell, was Marjorie Cameron, the one who was having sex with Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard in these Babylon workings, where they were trying to incarnate the spirit of the Antichrist into the world. So it wasn't about having a baby to take care of with horns or whatever. It wasn't Rosemary's Baby. It was this idea of birthing the zeitgeist. Anyway, this was the actress or the high priestess in these rites, and in 1945 she claimed to have seen a UFO. And the fascinating connection here is it shows you the relationship between these black magicians, black magic, demonic evocations, summoning things, and lights from the sky. The connection between demons and aliens, or interdimensionals. And then what's more, if you didn't know, the Roswell event happened, they crashed in Corona Field. I didn't know that, but during the first lockdown, I was like, screw this. And I rented a car and I drove to Roswell. And I went to the place and it's called Corona Field. I'm like, well, that's weird. Corona Field. This is a correlation between the outer space and inner space I was talking about earlier. And also noteworthy that the vaccine that Putin came out with last August was called Sputnik. Sputnik, the first object in orbit, the first orbiting satellite. I'm like, wait, that kicked off the space age. So there has been this parallel story with this alien invasion and viruses. Even Men in Black, which is all about what are Men in Black? They're contact tracers. HRC 6666, the contact tracers. Men in Black were contact tracers. And that movie has its climactic scene in the Corona Park or Corona Field. Again, contact tracing is a big part of that movie, big part of this whole scenario, because you're tracing the aliens within, the super spreaders, the carriers. Lickety says, who was that so-called FBI investigator that exposed the underground Disney tunnels? Are you talking about the one who was, I believe, when the Satanic Panic first started, you had a few characters who I think kind of brought some credibility to it because they had worked in the field. So there were a few names in the Satanic Panic. I think the one you're referring to is, let me see if I can get a list. So many of them have been since, discredited. But there was one, I believe, who was like chief of police in Los Angeles for some time, and he was the one who said that they were Satanists in high places. If anybody has the names of any of these individuals, but they had that, it was Gunderson, Ted Gunderson. And he may be one of the originators of this idea of the Pizzagate, one of the ones who gave real credibility to it. Ted Gunderson. Let me see what he was into. Did they ever come to any conclusion about the Frederick color? Some of these stories are so dark. When you get into these supposed satanic cabals and their trafficking, like Hunter S. Thompson supposedly doing snuff films. But yeah, you do find certain things like the Franklin cover-up, underage prostitution in high places, and then you find videos like Alex Jones going out to Bohemian Grove. And Bohemian Grove is just Burning Man for right-wingers. You got Burning Man, where they burn a man. You got Bohemian Grove, where, what do they do there? Oh yeah, they burn a man. Same thing. I'll revisit some Gunderson stuff. I find him to be a little questionable because he was on Metzger's Disinfo. It was this documentary, mostly just conspiratainment. Nothing wrong with that, disinfo.org, but it just seemed like the interview was just a little too stagey. And supposedly somebody from the Illuminati left a note on his truck. Like, I just couldn't really buy it. But yeah, by all means, if you find anything with Gunderson, I'd be interested. For those of you who are wondering what I was talking about earlier with Noah, the modern flood myth that, look, you got so many atheists who laugh at people who are still going to church because it's archaic. They think, oh, it's funny, you believe that Noah tried to warn the sinners and God flooded the world. Well, when Noah saved two of each, there was a dove that brought him an olive branch. So you think that's a positive symbol, right? No, that's the symbol of the reset. After they flood the world, everything's been wiped out, then the dove shows up. So it's not actually a positive symbol. Just noting this, because Lady Gaga sang the national anthem on the inauguration day wearing a dove with the olive branch on her chest while she's dressed up like somebody out of the Hunger Games, a post-reset movie. But anyway, this is your National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's logo. It's a dove over the ocean, and it's Noah. So if you're an atheist and you believe in this modern flood myth, you're believing in a retelling. It's a myth, in other words. It's not science. If you believe in global warming, you're not really an atheist. I mean, you've accepted a God proxy. And here you have Noah's Ark. Science, service, stewardship. And you've got the world flooded, and you've got their little dove symbol. And this story was told to the youth in the form of the movie Wall-E, which, by the way, I don't think it's a coincidence that the astronaut that went up to space with Bezos is named Wally Funk. Wall-E is a movie that starts off with the Earth encrusted in space junk and garbage. So the mankind they left in an ark, a space ark. So they've left the Earth because it's no longer habitable. Global warming, it's flooded. So Wall-E is another retelling of the same flood myth. And instead of a dove, there's a robot that looks like a dove. Her name is Eve. And what does she do? She goes down to the Earth and she finds a branch. And she takes it back up to the captain of the ship so they can return to the Earth. But do you remember when Noah went back to the Earth? They went back so that they could do so without all the wickedness that caused them to get flooded in the first place. The way Wall-E ends is they come back down to Earth and they realize technology was our downfall. So they have an agrarian, communist, green revolution. So they come back post-reset with a new way of doing things so they don't repeat the same problems. It's a flood myth for atheists, for statists, for people who don't believe in God. They get their God from Disney. And this movie has some things in it that really shouldn't be viewed by children if you get into the esoteric side of it. One more thing. This movie also makes use of the number 113. Directive 113 is the directive they're given which says it's time to leave the Earth. And one of the things is, in the movie Wall-E, when they bring this up, they show the president of the Earth giving the directive 113, and he puts on a mask. So it's like a reference to lockdown or something. But anyway, directive 113, November 13th, that date, that number is consistently being used. Even the reverse of it, 311. And supposedly, it's an inside joke within Pixar and Disney and these other. It's an inside joke, and it has to do with a room with a blue door 113. And where do you see blue doors? It just seems so conspicuous. But the temple door on the inside of Masonic Lodge, the Blue Lodge they call it, well, that's a Blue Lodge temple door, if you ask me, and that's why this symbolism is so prevalent. But if you look into this number 113, you'll see it's used in so many different movies as like an Easter egg. But it wasn't defined, it wasn't given a meaning until Wall-E. It says the code for the directive given to Otto to never return to Earth, and Otto would be Noah in this context, was A113. And it was the first time the number had any real significance to the film's plot. It also seems to spell out part of Wall-E's name, WA113. So the name Wall-E is actually, again, WA113. So you have your 113, 311 encoded into your modern flood myth movie, which is about resetting the world and starting over as communists, because we've all been turned into fat, overly entertained capitalists with no connection to the earth anymore. I mean, that's the storyline, and that we're no longer sustainable, and that our lifestyle requires exploitation. And that's what the robots on the space ark represent. Also, the reset did start in Seattle on 3/11. Our pandemic was declared 3/11, 2020. I could go into a long list of movies, especially on Netflix. Like, look up Netflix Colony, Season 3, Episode 11, where they talk about Operation Phoenix, which is a reset term. Like I said, the dove is synonymous with the phoenix in this context. Burn down, build back better, flood, build back better. But they're in Seattle, and somebody says, Seattle is ground zero for the reset of civilization. And that's because civilization had been destroyed by the alien invaders who never showed themselves. So an invisible alien conquers the world, kind of like COVID, and they say, Seattle's ground zero for the reset. Like, well, I mean, reboot is the word they used. Reboot of civilization, but reboot, reset, same thing. That's how we were able to predict it. You know, on that Sunday, we had a live stream. World War III begins on Wednesday. Remove Kippa says, I can't talk about it for legal reasons, but when more comes out, I'm okay to speak about it. Talking about youth homes in... Yeah, by all means. Phones are open, 833-311-1984. If you want to leave voicemails, I will get to them when we're not live. I'll listen, and then I'll bring them up if they're... And then also the forums. I always go through the forums. I'm going to put one more link in the chat. If you want to make sure you don't miss anything, if you don't want to miss any of our live streams, and if you want to support what we're doing here, which is a think tank, it's a counter media presence, because alt media is MSM light. It always has been. It's always been controlled opposition. So what we're doing is outside of that. I consider it to be a post-media critique. Oftentimes, I'm reminded of Mystery Science Theater 3000, this TV show where the premise of it is you have these individuals who are more or less captive audiences. They're prisoners of some kind of an alien that makes them watch bad science fiction. And it's like, that's kind of what we're dealing with here. The cult of the monolith that has this overarching control over all media and is shaping the world religion. And this Wall-E is just one more example of it. This totally, it's a global echo chamber is what it is. It has no real opposition. It really doesn't. It censors anything that's not of it. If you want to maintain a continuous flow of information, a contiguous thought process and research with other heretics. Like, this is one of the few places. And the reason why I insist on the Patreon is that no matter what channels get banned, it's like a newsletter. And I just blast out a newsletter whenever we go live. So if any of you are wondering when you can catch the live streams, that's how. All right, so same time, same place tomorrow. Thanks everyone for joining. This is Lucifer Tim, the official Flat Earth National Anthem. Have a great night.
Looking pretty serious, synchronizations, cooking up a terror storm. It was always bound to happen. Look at the sun, look at the sun, look at the sun, look at the sun. Individual, cognizant, dependent and free, been kicked out of me, hypnotized by words and by magic. Pictures, stories, symbols and lies have been spiked with this information. They bought and sold and packaged my eyes. Hello, hello, yeah, you know, I know that you know, yeah, you know. Hello, hello, yeah, you know, I know that you know, yeah, we all know. Look at the sun, look at the sun, look at the sun. Imprisoned up a village, he dictated decrees, been passed down to me, hypnotized by words and by magic, pictures and stories, symbols and lies. I've been spiked with this information. They bought and sold and packaged my eyes. Hello, hello, yeah, you know, I know that you know, yeah, you know. Hello, hello, yeah, you know, I know that you know, yeah, we all know. Look at the sun, look at the sun, look at the sun, look at the sun.
It's like, we're all going to die someday, and if you're going to pick some place to die, then why not Mars? Okay. You know, if we're born on Earth, why not die on Mars? Seems like maybe it'd be kind of exciting. But so I think, given the choice of dying on Earth or dying on Mars, I'd say, yeah, sure, I'll die on Mars.